梁歌制作，秋柳，作者郁达夫。一间黑漆漆的不大不小的地方里，搭着几张纵横的床铺，与房门相对的北面壁上有一口小窗，从这窗里射进来的10月中旬的一天晴朗的早晨的光线。
Production by Liang Gu, author of Autumn Willow, Dafu. 1. In a dark, medium-sized underground room, there were several beds set up horizontally and vertically. There is a small window on the north wall opposite the door, through which light shines in on a clear morning in mid-October.
在小窗下的床上照出了一个25、6岁的青年的睡容来。这青年的面上带着疲倦的样子，本来没有血色的他的睡容，因为房内的光线不好，更苍白的怕人。他的头上的一头漆黑粗长的头发。
The sleeping face of a young man in his mid-20s was reflected on the bed under the small window. There was a tired look on this young man's face, and his sleeping face, which was originally bloodless, was even more frighteningly pale because of the poor lighting in the room. On his head was thick and dark hair.
便是他的唯一的美点，蓬蓬地散在一个白布的西洋枕上。房内还有2张进房门的床铺，被褥都已折叠得整整齐齐。每日早起惯的这2张床的主人，不知已经往什么地方去了。
It was his only beauty, fluffy and scattered on a white western pillow. There were 2 beds near the door, with the bedding neatly folded. The owners of these 2 beds, who were used to getting up early every day, had gone somewhere.
这3张床铺上都是没有蚊帐的。房里有的2张桌子，一张摆在北面的墙壁下，靠着那青年睡着的床头，一张既摆在房门边上的。2张桌子上摊着些肥皂盒子、镜子、纸烟罐、文房具。
There are no mosquito nets on these 3 beds. There were 2 tables in the room, one was placed under the north wall, next to the bedside where the young man slept, and the other was placed next to the door. Spread out on the 2 tables were some soap boxes, mirrors, cigarette cans, and stationery.
和几本定安全集、唐诗选之类。靠着北面墙壁的那张桌子，大约是睡在床上的青年专用的，因为在那些杂乱的罐和书籍的中间有一册红皮面的洋书和一册淡绿色的日记。
And several copies of Dingan's complete works, selected poems of the Tang dynasty, and so on. The table against the north wall was probably reserved for young people sleeping on the bed, because among the messy jars and boxes of books there was a red leather-bound foreign book and a light green diary.
在那黑暗的室内放一样的光彩。日记上面记着2排横字：1921年日记于志夫。洋书的名目是《The Earthly Paradise by William Morris》。
It gave off a strange light in that dark room. There are 2 rows of horizontal characters written on the diary, Diary of 1921, and Yujifu. The titles of the foreign books are The Earthly Paradise and by William Morris.
这地方只有一扇朝南的小门，门外就是街沿，沿外便是天井。过了半点多钟，一个体格壮大，年约45、6，戴一副墨色小眼镜，头上有一块秃的绅士跑了进来，走进青年的床边叫着，说
There is only a small door facing south in this place. Outside the door is the eaves, and beyond the eaves is the patio. About half an hour later, a tall, muscular gentleman, about 45 or 66 years old, wearing a pair of dark glasses and a bald spot on his head, ran in, approached the young man's bedside and shouted, Explain.
制服眼看着高爽的青天，一面刷牙，一面在那里想昨晚上和吴峰市上班子里去的冒险事情。他洗完了面，回到房里来换洋服的时候，明先正坐在房门口的桌上看唐诗选。制服换好了洋服。
Jifu looked at the refreshing blue sky, brushing his teeth while thinking about the adventure he and Wu Fengshe went to the office last night. After he washed his face and returned to his room to change into foreign clothes, Ming Xian was sitting on the table at the door of the room reading selected poems of the Tang dynasty. The hostess changed into a foreign suit.
便对明先说，床上睡着的青年开了半只眼睛，向门外一望，觉得阳光强烈，射得眼睛开不开来。朝里翻了一转身，他又丝丝地睡着了。正是早晨9点3、50分的样子，在僻静的巷内的这家小客栈里。
Then he said to Ming Xian. The young man who was sleeping on the bed opened half of his eyes and looked out the door. He felt that the sunlight was so strong that he could not open his eyes. Turning over, he hissed back to sleep. It was exactly 9:35 in the morning, in this small inn in a secluded alley.
现在却当最静寂的时候，所以那青年得尽一探他的安睡。听了这一句话，制服就从他那蓝色纺绸被里坐了起来，披了一件留学时候做的大袖寝袍，他跑出了房门，便上后面厨房里去洗面刷牙去。
Now was the quietest time, so the young man had to covet his peaceful sleep. After hearing these words, the hostage sat up from his blue silk quilt. Putting on a long-sleeved robe he made while studying abroad, he ran out of the room and went to the kitchen behind to wash his face and brush his teeth.
依制服讲来，这一次法政专门学校的风潮是很容易解决的。 开除几个闹事的学生，由省长或教育厅长迎接校长、教职员全体回校上课，就没有事了。而这一次风潮竟延宕至1星期多，还不能解决。
According to Dafu, this trend in the College of Law and Political Science is easy to solve. If a few troublemaking students are expelled and the governor or education director welcomes all principals and staff back to school, then everything will be fine. But this time the trend has been delayed for more than a week and still cannot be resolved.
都是因为省长无决断的缘故。他一边虽在这样的气氛，一边心里却有些希望这事件再延长几天的心思。因为法政学校远在城外，万一事件解决，搬回学校之后，白天他若要进城上班子里去。
It's all because of the governor's lack of decision-making. Although he was so angry, at the same time he was hoping that this incident would be extended for a few more days. Because the School of Law and Politics is far outside the city, if the incident is resolved and he moves back to the school, he will have to go to the city to go to work during the day.
颇非容易，晚上进城，因城门早闭，进出更加不便。昨天晚上，吴峰是替他介绍的那姑娘海棠，脸虽则不好，但是她总是一个女性。目下断绝女人有2、3月之久的制夫，只求有一个女性。
It's not easy. Entering the city at night, because the city gates are closed early, makes it even more inconvenient to go in and out. The girl Haitang that Wu Fengshe introduced to him last night may not have a good face, but it's not easy. Entering the city at night, because the city gates are closed early, makes it even more inconvenient to go in and out. The girl Haitang that Wu Fengshe introduced to him last night may not have a good face, but she is always a woman. At present, the woman has been separated from her hostage for 2 or 3 months, and all she wants is a woman.
和他谈谈就够了，还要问什么美丑？况且昨晚上看见的那海棠，又好像非常忠厚似的，制服已动了一点怜惜的心情。此后若海棠能披心沥胆地待他，他也想尽他的力量报效他一番。
It's enough to talk to her and ask about beauty and ugliness. Moreover, the Haitang he saw last night seemed to be very loyal, and the hostage had already felt a little pity for her. If Haitang could treat him with all her heart, he would also do his best to repay her.
从天井里射进来的太阳光线渐渐地照到地房里来，地房里浮动着的尘埃在太阳光线里看得出来了。制服，你昨晚上到什么地方去了？睡到此刻还没有起。青年翻过身，擦擦眼睛，一边打呵欠。
The sun's rays coming in from the patio gradually shone into the basement, and the dust floating in the basement could be seen in the sunlight. Host, where did you go last night? You haven't gotten up yet? The young man turned over, wiped his eyes, and yawned.
一边说，明些，我真等得不耐烦起来了。我们是来教书，并不是来避难的。这样在空中悬挂的状态，若再经过1、2个礼拜，怕我要变成极度的神经衰弱症呢。我昨晚在吴峰氏家里讲闲话。
While saying, Ming Xian, I'm really impatient to wait. We are here to teach, not to seek refuge. If I hang in the air like this for another 1 or 2 weeks, I'm afraid I will develop an extreme neurasthenia. I was gossiping at Wu Fengshe's house last night.
一直做到12点钟才回来的。省长说，开除闹事的几个学生究竟怎么样了？怕还有几天好笑呢。已经快10点钟了，还要说早恋。你昨晚在什么地方？哦，明些，你走来的这样早。
I sat there until 12 o'clock and didn't come back. The governor said that some students who cause trouble should be expelled. What happened? I'm afraid it will be funny for a few more days. It's almost 10 o'clock, it's still early. Where were you last night? Oh. Ming Xian. You came so early.
制服和明先谈了一番闲话，便跑上大街上去闲逛去了。2. 长江北岸的秋风一天一天的凉冷起来。法政学校风潮解决以后，制服搬回校内居住有快1礼拜了，闹事的几个学生都已开除。
The hostage and Ming chatted for a while, then ran to the street to wander. 2. The autumn wind on the north bank of the Yangtze River is getting cooler day by day. After the turmoil at Hosei School was resolved, it has been almost a week since the hostages moved back to live on campus, and the students who caused the trouble have all been expelled.
陆校长因为军阀李麦总不肯仍复让他在那里做教育界的领袖，所以为学校的前途计，他自家便辞了职。那一天正是陆校长上学校最后的一日。陆校长自到这学校以后，事事整顿。
Principal Liu resigned because the warlord Li Mai refused to let him continue to be the leader of the education sector there, so he resigned for the sake of the future of the school. That day was Principal Liu's last day at school. Principal Liu has put everything in order since he arrived at this school.
非但 AD 的教育界里的人都仰慕他，便是这一次闹事的几个学生心里也是佩服的。一般中立的大多数的学生，当风潮发生的时候，虽不出来力争，但对陆校长却个个都畏之若父，爱之若母。
Not only the people in the educational circles of Place A admire him, but also the students who caused trouble this time also admire him in their hearts. The majority of students who are generally neutral will not come out to fight when a trend breaks out, but they all fear Principal Lu like a father and love him like a mother.
一听他要辞职，便都变成失了牧童的迷羊，正不知道怎么才好。这几日来，学校的寄宿舍里正同冷灰堆一样，连闲来讲话的时候都没有一个发高声的人了。教职员中大半都是陆校长聘请来的人。
As soon as they heard that he was going to resign, they all turned into lost sheep without a shepherd boy and didn't know what to do. In the past few days, the school's boarding dormitory has been like a heap of cold ashes. No one even raised his voice when he had time to talk. Most of the teaching staff are people hired by Principal Lu.
经了这一次风潮，并且又见陆校长去了，也都是点兔死狐悲的哀感。大家因为继任的校长是同事中最老实的许明先的缘故，不能辞职，但是个人的心里都无执意，大约离散也不远了。
After this turmoil and seeing Principal Lu again, it was all a bit sad. We can't resign because the successor principal is Su Mingxian, the most honest among our colleagues, but we all have no resolve in our hearts, and the separation is probably not far away.
陆校长这样简单的说了几句，悠悠下来的时候，大讲堂里有几处提气的声音听得出来了。制服看了陆校长的神色不动的脸色，看了他这一种从容自在的训教者的态度。
Principal Lu said a few simple words like this, and when you came down, you could hear a few crying sounds in the lecture hall. The hostage looked at Principal Lu's expressionless face and saw his calm and martyr attitude.
又被大讲堂内竞速的空气一压，早就有一种感伤的情怀存在了。即听了学生的暗气声音，他立刻觉得眼睛酸痛起来。不待大家散会，制服却一个人先跑回了房里。
He was pressed by the quiet air in the lecture hall, and he already had a sentimental feeling. When he heard the students crying secretly, he immediately felt his eyes sore. Before everyone could finish the meeting, the hostage ran back to the room alone.
陆校长这一天一早就上了2个钟头课，把未完的讲义分给了1、2两班的学生。退堂的时候对学生说：“陆校长去校的那一天，制服心里只觉得一种悲愤，无处可以发泄。”
Principal Lu had a 2-hour class early that morning. He distributed the unfinished lecture notes to the students in classes 1 and 2. When he left the class, he said to the students. The day Principal Lu went to school, Dafu felt only a kind of sadness and anger in his heart, with nowhere to vent.
所以下半天他也请了半天假，跑进城来。他在大街上走了一会，总觉得无聊之极，不知不觉，他的两脚就向了官娼聚集着的金樽巷走去。到了陆河班的门口，正在迟疑的时候，门内站着的几个男人。
So he took a half day off in the second half of the day and ran into the city. He walked on the street for a while, but he always felt extremely bored. Unconsciously, he walked towards Golden Trout Alley where official prostitutes gathered. Go. When they arrived at the door of Lu Heaven, when they were hesitating, they saw several men standing inside the door.
却大声叫着说，这样讲了一句，他脸上露了一脸悲寂的微笑。制服忽而觉得他可爱起来，便对他说，这样的问答了几句，制服把那小孩抱出来看了一遍，乳母就走往后间的房里去了。
But he shouted loudly and said. After saying this, a sad smile appeared on her face. The hostage suddenly felt that she was cute, so he said to her, Dash. After a few questions and answers like this, the hostess took the child out and looked at it once, and the wet nurse went to the back room.
后间原来就是乳母的寝室。过了一刻，吴风氏来了，一个31、2，身材纤长的漂亮绅士，我们一见就知道他是在花柳界有艳福的人。他的清秀多致的面庞，彻久的衣服，讲话的清音。
The back room turned out to be the wet nurse's bedroom. After a moment, Wu Fengshe came. A handsome gentleman of 31 years old with a slender figure. As soon as we saw him, we knew that he was a man of beauty in the world of flowers and willows. His handsome and wise face, wine-clearing clothes, and clear voice.
多有牵引人的迷力。制服对他看了一眼，相形之下，觉得自家在中国社会上应该是不能战胜利的。风氏一进制服的那间小屋，就问说，制服就把刚才上海棠家去，海棠怎么的待他。
There are many charms that attract people. The hostage glanced at him and felt that his family should not be able to win in Chinese society. As soon as Fengshe entered the hut where his hostage was staying, he asked. The hostage went to Shanghai Tang's house just now and Hai Tang treated him how he did.
他心里想得没趣，就跑到这里来的情节讲了一遍。风氏听了笑着说，制服坐了一回，说了几句闲话，就从那里走了出来。他在狭隘的街上向南走了一阵，看看时间已经不早。
He was bored, so he recounted the story of how he came here. Fengshe smiled and said. The hostage sat for a while, chatted a few words, and then walked out. He walked south on the narrow street for a while to see that it was getting late.
便一个人走上一家清真菜馆里去吃夜饭。这家姓杨的叫门馆，门面虽则不大，但是当柜的一个媳妇生得俊俏得很，所以制服每次进城总要上那菜馆去吃一次。制服在床沿上坐下之后
So I went to a halal restaurant to have dinner alone. Although this restaurant named Yang is not big in appearance, the daughter-in-law who works as a waiter is very handsome, so every time the hostage comes to the city, he always goes to the restaurant to eat. After the hostage sat down on the edge of the bed.
贾母问他说，制服听了这话，回想一遍，觉得刚才海棠的态度却是他的愚笨的表现，并不是冷遇，且又听说他进来客少，心里却起了一种侠义心，便自家对自家起誓说。制服听了这几声叫声
The false mother asked him. After hearing this, the hostage thought about it again and felt that Haitang's attitude just now was indeed a sign of her stupidity, not a cold reception. Moreover, he also heard that she had few visitors recently, but he felt a sense of chivalry in his heart, so he swore an oath to his family. Explain. The false mother asked him. After hearing this, the hostage thought about it again and felt that Haitang's attitude just now was indeed a sign of her stupidity, not a cold reception.
就不得不马上跑进去。海棠的矮小的贾母鼻子打了几条皱纹，笑嘻嘻地走了出来。制服进房，看见海棠刚在那里吃早饭的样子，他手里捏了饭碗，从桌子上站了起来。今天他的装饰与前次不同。
I had to run in immediately. Begonia's short fake mother came out smiling with a few wrinkles on her nose. The hostage entered the room and saw Haitang just having breakfast there. She held the rice bowl in her hands and stood up from the table. Her decorations were different today than last time.
头上梳了一条辫子，穿的是一件蓝缎鱼的棉袄，罩着一件青灰竹布的单衫，底下穿的是一条蟹青湖皱裤子。他大约是刚才起来，脸上的血色还没有流通，所以比前次更觉得苍白。
He had a braid on his head, and wore a blue satin cotton padded jacket, a green-gray bamboo cloth singlet, and a pair of Crab Lake crepe pants underneath. She had probably gotten up just now, and the blood on her face had not yet circulated, so she felt paler than last time.
新梳好的光泽泽的辫子添了他一层可怜的样子。制服走进他的身边问他说，制服一蹦店门，他的一双灵活的眼睛就去寻那媳妇，但今天不知他上哪里去了，楼下总寻不出来。
The newly combed shiny braids added to her pitiful look. The hostage approached her and asked her. As soon as the hostage burst into the store door, his quick eyes went to look for the wife, but I don't know where she went today, and she couldn't be found downstairs.
制服慢慢地走上楼的时候，楼上听差的几个回子一齐招呼了他一声。他抬头一看，门头却遇见了那媳妇。那媳妇对他笑了一脸，制服倒红脸起来，因为他是穿洋服的，所以店里的人都认识他。
As the hostage slowly walked upstairs, several waiters upstairs greeted him. He looked up and saw his wife at the door. The wife smiled at him, and the hostage blushed. Because he wore Western clothes, everyone in the store knew him.
他一上楼，几个听差的人就让他上那一间里边角上的小屋里去了。一则今天早晨的郁闷未散，二则午后去看海棠，又觉得他冷落得很，制服心里总觉得快快不乐。得了那回回的女人的一脸微笑。
As soon as he went upstairs, several footmen asked him to go up to the small room in the corner. Firstly, I was still depressed this morning. Secondly, I went to see Haitang in the afternoon and felt that she was very neglected. The hostess always felt happy and unhappy in his heart. The woman who got that time smiled.
他心里虽然轻快了些，但总觉得有点寂寞。写了一张请单，去请吴风氏过来共饮的时候，他心里只在那里追想海外咖啡店里的情趣。说了这几句话，1、2两班里的学生眼圈都红了。
Although he felt lighter, he still felt a little lonely. When he wrote an invitation to invite Wu Fengshe to come over for a drink, he was only thinking about the fun in overseas coffee shops. After saying these few words, the eyes of the students in classes 1 and 2 became red.
海棠在旁边只是呆呆地听制服和他贾母讲闲话，既不来插嘴，也不朝制服看一眼。他收住了一双倒挂下的眼睛，尽在那里吸一支纸烟。正这时候
Haitang just stood there and listened blankly as the hostage and her fake mother chatted. He neither interrupted nor glanced at his hostess. She closed her eyes that were hanging upside down and smoked a cigarette. Just at this time,
一个长大肥胖的乳母抱了一个7、8个月大的小娃娃进来了。制服就从床上站起来，走上去看那小娃娃。海棠也跟了过来。制服问他说：“敲10点钟的时候，全校的学生齐集在大讲堂上。”
A wet nurse who had grown obese came in carrying a 7 or 8-month-old baby. The hostage stood up from the bed and walked up to see the little baby. Haitang also came over. The hostage asked her, When 10 o'clock struck, all the students in the school gathered in the lecture hall.
听陆校长的训话，他摇着头说。他把饭碗收起来后，又微微笑着说。他指挥他说：“贾母讲的没有话讲了，就把班子里近来生意不好，1月要开销几多，海棠不会代课的事情。”
Listen to Principal Lu's instructions. She shook her head and said. After she put away her rice bowl, she smiled slightly and said, dash. She only replied to him. The fake mother ran out of things to say, so she asked her team about how much business they had been doing recently, how much they would spend per month, and how Haitang didn't know how to entertain guests.
断断续续地说了出来。智大本来是不喜欢那贾母，听了这些话更不快活了，所以他就丢下了他，走进海棠身边去，对海棠说。贾母拿了一只3炮台来请智夫吸，智夫接了过来，就对他说。
He spoke intermittently. Jida originally didn't like the fake mother, but after hearing these words, he became even more unhappy. So he left her behind, approached Haitang, and said to Haitang. The fake mother brought a 3/4 gun to her hostage and asked her hostage to suck it. The hostage took it and said to her.
从容旷达的陆校长不改常识的态度，挺着了5尺8寸长的身体，放大了洪钟式的喉音，对学生说。一边说，一边制服就伸出手向他面上摘了一把。海棠慢慢举起了他那迟钝的眼睛。
The calm and open-minded Principal Lu did not change his usual attitude. He straightened his 5'8" body and spoke to the students in a loud voice like a bell. As he said this, the hostess reached out his hand and picked a handful on her face. Haitang slowly raised her dull eyes.
对智夫微微的笑了一脸，就也伸出手来把智夫的手捏住了。贾母见他2人很火热的在那里玩，也就跑了出去。智夫拉了海棠的手，同他上床去打横睡倒。2人脸朝着外面，头靠在床里叠好的被上。
He smiled slightly at the hostage, then reached out and squeezed the hostage's hand. The fake mother saw the two of them playing there very passionately, so she ran out. The hostage took Haitang's hand, went to bed with her, and fell asleep. The two of them faced outside and rested their heads on the quilt folded on the bed.
智夫对海棠看了一眼，他的2眼还是呆呆的在看床顶。智夫把自家的头靠上了他的胸际，他也只微微的笑了一脸。智夫觉得没有话好同他讲，便轻轻地问他说：“这一次风潮的始末。”
The hostage glanced at Haitang. Her eyes were still staring blankly at the top of the bed. The hostage put his head on her chest, and she only smiled slightly. The hostage felt that he had nothing to say to her, so he asked her gently. The beginning and end of this trend.
想来诸君都已知道，不要我再说了。但是我在这里，李麦总不肯甘休。与其为我个人的缘故使李麦来破坏这学校，倒还不如牺牲了我个人，保全这学校的好。我当临去的时候，3件事情。
I think you all already know this and don't want me to say anything more. But I am here, and Li Mai always refuses to give up. Rather than asking Li Mai to destroy this school for my own sake, it would be better to sacrifice myself to preserve this school. When I am about to leave, 3 things will happen.
希望诸君以后能够守着。第一就是要注意秩序，没有秩序是我们中国人的通病。以后我希望诸君无论在什么时候都能维持秩序，秩序能维持，那无论什么事情都能干了。第二是要保重身体。
I hope you guys can keep it safe in the future. The first thing is to pay attention to order. Lack of order is a common problem among us Chinese people. In the future, I hope that you can maintain order no matter what time you go. If order can be maintained, then anything can be done. The second is to take care of yourself.
我们中国不讲究体育，所以国民大抵未老先衰，不能成就大事业。以后希望诸君能保重身体，使健全的精神很有健全的依附之所，那我们中国就有希望了。第三是要尊重学问。我们在气愤的时候
We in China do not pay much attention to sports, so most of the people will age before they get old and will not be able to achieve great things. In the future, I hope you can take care of your body and have a sound mind to have a sound place to rely on. Then there will be hope for China. The third is to respect knowledge. When we are angry.
虽则学问无用，正人君子，反遭毒害。但是久久归元，学问究竟是我们的根基，根基不固，终究不能成大事创大业的。智夫，怎么你一个人便跑上这里来？谢谢，请客的就要回来了，点几样什么菜？
Although knowledge is useless and upright men are poisoned, at the end of the day, knowledge is our foundation. If the foundation is not solid, we will not be able to achieve great things or great achievements. Hostage. Although knowledge is useless and upright men are poisoned, at the end of the day, knowledge is our foundation. If the foundation is not solid, we will not be able to achieve great things or great achievements. Hostage. Why did you come here alone? Thanks. The treater is coming back soon. How many dishes will you order?
一个中年回子又来问了一声。 要是在外国的咖啡店里，那我就可以把那媳妇拉了过来，抱在膝上，也可以口对口接送几杯葡萄酒，也可以摸摸她的上下。哎，我托生错了，我不该生在中国的。
A middle-aged man came and asked again. If we were in a foreign coffee shop, then I could pull the daughter-in-law over and hold her on my lap. I could also give her a few glasses of wine mouth to mouth, or I could touch her up and down. Alas, I was wrong. I shouldn't have been born in China.
等课来了再和你说。海棠，你在这里想什么？没有什么。是你的小孩吗？我吃好了，今天吴老爷为什么不来？我们天天是这时候起床，没有什么早饭中饭的。我为学校本身打算，还不如辞职的好。
I'll tell you when the guests arrive. Begonia, what are you thinking about here? Dut, there is nothing. Is it your child? I finished eating. Why doesn't Mr. Wu come today? We get up at this time every day, and there is no breakfast or lunch. For the sake of the school itself, I might as well resign.
你们此后应该刻意用功，不要使人家说你们不成样子，那就是你们爱戴我的最好的表示。我现在虽已经辞职，但是你们的荣辱，我还在当做自家的荣辱看的。尹洛，海棠姑娘房里。
You should study hard from now on and don't let others say you are bad. That is the best way to show your love for me. Although I have resigned now, I still regard your honor and disgrace as my own. Lead the way. In Miss Haitang's room.
你子上什么地方去了？你妈待你怎么样？你好大胆，在白日青天的底下，竟敢一个人跑上班子里去。海棠那笨姑娘本来是如此的，并不是冷遇，因为她不能对付客人，所以进来客人少得很。
Where did your sister go? How does your mother treat you? You are so bold, you dare to run into the office alone under the bright blue sky. That stupid girl Haitang is like this, and it's not a cold reception. Because she can't deal with customers, there are very few customers recently.
我因为爱她的忠厚，所以替你介绍的。你若不喜欢，我就同你上另外的班子里去找一个爸。你吃的是早饭还是中饭？你吃你的爸，不必来招呼我。他还有事情，大约晚上总来的。他住在城里，我住在城外。
Because I love her honesty, I introduced her to you. If you don't like her, I will go with you to find someone in another team. Did you have breakfast or lunch? You just eat your own food, there is no need to come and greet me. He still has something to do, so he always comes around at night. He lives in the city, I live outside the city.
我当然是不能常同他同来的。于老爷，海棠大人在等你，你怎么老是不来？吴老爷是天天晚上来的。不知道？不是，是我子的。我要救世人，必须先从救个人入手。海棠既是短一差池的，赶人不上。
Of course I can't always come with him. Mr. Yu, Master Haitang is waiting for you. Why don't you always come? Mr. Wu comes every night. Have no idea. No, it belongs to my sister. If I want to save the world, I must first save individuals. Haitang has short wings and is unable to catch up with others.
我就替他尽些力罢。知府喝了几杯酒，对吴风氏发了许多牢骚，为他自家的悲凉激越的语气所感动，倒滴落了几滴自伤的清泪。讲到后来，他便放大了嗓子说：“可怜那鲁钝的海棠，也是同我一样。”
I'll just do my best for her. The hostage drank a few glasses of wine and complained a lot to Wu Fengshe. I'll just do my best for her. The hostage drank a few glasses of wine and complained a lot to Wu Fengshe. He was moved by his own sad and passionate tone, and shed a few tears of self-injury. After speaking, he loudly raised his voice. Said, Poor dull Haitang, he is just like me.
貌又不美，又不能媚人，所以落得清苦得很。唉，农未成名君未嫁，可怜巨士不如人。念到这里，制服胡拍了一下桌子，叫着说：“海棠，海棠，我以后就替你出力罢，我觉得非常爱你了。”农金葬花人笑痴。
She was neither beautiful nor charming, so she ended up in poverty. Alas, I am not yet famous and you are not married, so I am pitiful and inferior to others. After thinking of this, the hostage suddenly slapped the table and shouted, Haitang, Haitang, I will do my best for you from now on. I feel that I love you very much. Today, the people who bury flowers are laughing like crazy.
他撵葬农之是谁？点灯时候，吃完了晚饭，制服马上想回学校去，但被风氏劝了几次，他就又去到陆河班里。那时候他还带着些微醉，所以对了海棠和风氏的情人何珠，并何珠的侄女清官人碧桃。
Who knows who he was buried in? When it was time to light up the lanterns and after dinner, Jifu immediately wanted to go back to school, but after being persuaded by Fengshe several times, he went back to Luha's class. At that time, he was still a little drunk, so by the way Haitang and Fengshe's lover Hezhu and Hezhu's niece Bitao, an upright official.
讲了许多义侠的话， 同戏院里唱武生的一样，制服胸前一拍，半真半假的叫着说：“老子原是仗义轻财的好汉，海棠，你也不必自伤孤冷，明朝我替你去贴一张广告，招些有钱的老爷来对你罢了。”
He said a lot of chivalrous words. Just like the martial arts singer in the theater, the hostess clapped his chest and shouted half truthfully, I am a good man who cares about justice over wealth, Haitang. You don't have to hurt yourself and be lonely. Tomorrow I will put up an advertisement for you and recruit some rich men to deal with you.
海棠听了这话，也对他啐了一声。今年才15岁的碧桃，穿着男孩的长袍马褂，看得制服的神气好笑，便跑上他的身边来叫他说：“喂，你疯了吗？”制服看看碧桃的形状。
After hearing this, Haitang also spat at him. Bitao, who was only 15 years old this year, was wearing a boy's long robe and mandarin jacket. Seeing the hostage's expression was funny, she ran up to him and called him, Hey, are you crazy? The hostess looked at the shape of the peach.
忽而感到了与他2月不见的吴池生的身上去，所以他便跑上他的后面，把身子扶在他背上，要他背了到床上去和风氏合珠说话。
Suddenly he felt Wu Qisheng, whom he had not seen for 2 months. So he ran up behind her, laid his body on her back, and asked her to carry her to the bed to talk to Feng Shihezu.
今晚上，风氏劝制服上路和班海棠这里来，原来是替制服消白天的气的。所以一进班子，风氏就跟制服走上了海棠房里。风氏的情人何珠和何珠的侄女碧桃，因为风氏在那里，所以也跑了过来。
Tonight, Feng Shi persuaded his hostage to Shanglu and ban Haitang. It turned out that they came here to relieve the hostage's anger during the day. So as soon as he entered the team, Feng Shi and his hostage walked into Haitang's room. Feng Shi's lover He Zhu and He Zhu's niece Bai Tao also ran over because Feng Shi was there.
风氏因为制服说今晚晚饭吃得太饱，不能消化，所以就叫海棠的贾母去买了1块钱鸦片烟，在床上烧着。制服不能烧烟，就风氏手里吸了一口，便从床上站了起来。
Because Feng Shi said that his hostage was too full after dinner tonight and could not digest.
和海棠碧桃在那里演那一匣的滑稽话剧。制服扶在碧桃背上，要碧桃背上床沿之后，就拉了碧桃睡倒在烟盘的这边，对面是风氏，打侧睡在那里烧烟。何珠伏在风氏的身上，再和他悠悠地说话。
There he and Haitang Bitao performed a comical play about the righteous knight. The hostage lay on Bitao's back, and after asking Bitao to carry Bitao on the edge of the bed, he pulled Bitao and slept on this side of the cigarette tray. Opposite was Feng Shi. He slept there on his side and burned cigarettes. He Zhu lay on Feng Shi's body, talking to him quietly.
制服拉碧桃睡倒之后，碧桃却骑在他的身上，问起种种不相干的事物来。制服认真的说明给他听，他也认真的在那里听着。讲了一呼，风氏和何珠的密语停止了。制服听得他们密语停止后
After the hostess Labitao fell asleep, Bitao sat on him and asked about all kinds of irrelevant things. The hostage explained it to her seriously, and she listened carefully. After talking for a while, Feng Shi and He Zhu's secret words stopped. After the hostage heard their secret words stop.
倒觉得自家说的话说得太多了，便朝对面的何珠看了一眼。何珠也正呆呆在那里看他和碧桃2人的视线接触的时候，何珠便喷笑了出来。这是何珠特有的爱娇，制服倒被他笑得脸红了。
He felt that he had said too much, so he glanced at He Zhu opposite him. He Zhu was also staring blankly at him and Bitao when their eyes came into contact, and He Zhu burst into laughter. This was He Zhu's unique love and affection, and her hostage blushed when she laughed.
何珠一面笑着，一面便对制服说：“你们倒像是要好的2弟兄。于老爷你也就做了我的侄儿吧。”制服仰起头来，对呆呆坐在床前椅子上的海棠说：“海棠，何珠要认我做侄儿。”
He Zhu smiled and said to the interrogator, You seem to be 2 good brothers. Mr. Yu, you just become my nephew. The hostage raised his head and said to Haitang, who was sitting blankly on the chair in front of the bed. Haitang. He Zhu wants to recognize me as his nephew.
你愿意不愿意他做你的姑母？海棠听了也只微微地笑了一脸，就走到床沿上来坐下了。制服这一晚在海棠房里坐到12点钟打后才出来，从温软光明的妓女房里。
Would you like her to be your aunt? After hearing this, Haitang only smiled slightly, walked to the edge of the bed and sat down. Would you like her to be your aunt? After hearing this, Haitang only smiled slightly, walked to the edge of the bed and sat down. The hostage sat in Haitang's room that night until 12 o'clock, and then came out from one soft and bright prostitute's room.
走到黑暗冷清的外面街上的时候，制服忽而打了一个冷静。他仰起头看看青天，从狭隘的街上只看见了一条长狭的茫茫无底的天空，浮了几颗明肯，高高的映在京城的夜气上面。
When he walked into the dark and deserted street outside, the hostage suddenly had a cold convulsion. He raised his head and looked at the sky. From the narrow street, I could only see a long and narrow stretch of the bottomless sky, with a few floating stars, reflected high in the clear night air.
一种欢乐后的孤寂的悲感，忽而把智夫的心地占领了。封氏要留智夫住在城里，智夫怎么也不肯。向封氏要了一张出城券，智夫就坐了人力车，从人家睡绝后的街上跑向北门的城门下来。
A lonely sadness after joy suddenly occupied the hostage's heart. Feng Shi wanted to keep his hostage in the city, but he refused no matter what. After asking Feng Shi for a ticket to leave the city, the hostage took a rickshaw and ran to the north gate from the street where no one slept.
守城门的警察看看智夫的佯装姿势，便默默地替他开了门。智夫下车出了城门，在一条高低不平的乡下道上跌来碰去地走回家校里去。他的四周都是黑沉沉的夜气。
The policeman guarding the city gate saw the hostage's posture in the dress and silently opened the door for him. The hostage got out of the car and walked out of the city gate, stumbling back and forth on an uneven country road as he walked back to school. All around him was the dark night air.
仰起头来，只见得一湾蓝黑无穷的碧落和几颗明灭的秋星。一道城墙的黑影和怪物似的盘踞在他的右手城壕的上面，从远处飞来的几声悠悠的犬吠声，好像是在城下唱送葬的挽歌的样子。
Looking up, I could only see a bay of endless blue and black blue sky, and a few bright and dying autumn stars. A black shadow of the city wall was entrenched above the moat on his right hand like a monster, and several faint dog barks came from far away, as if they were singing a funeral dirge under the city.
智夫回到了学校里，轻轻叫开了门，摸到自家房里，点着了洋烛，把衣服换好睡下的时候，远处已经有鸡啼声叫得见了。3. 城外的秋光老了，法政学校附近的灵湖公园里。
The hostage returned to the school and opened the door softly. When I went into my room, lit a candle, changed my clothes and went to bed, I could already hear the crowing of chickens in the distance. 3. Chilguang outside City A is old. In Linghu Park near Hosei School.
凋落成一片的萧瑟景象，道旁的杨柳榆树之类，在清冷的早上，虽然没有微风，萧萧的黄叶也沙拉沙拉的飞坠下来。微寒的早晨，觉得温软的虫亲可恋起来了。天生的好恶性。
The desolate scene withered into pieces, the willow and elm trees beside the road. In the cold morning, although there is no breeze, the rustling yellow leaves are flying down. On a slightly cold morning, I felt fond of the warm and soft heavy quilt. Naturally good and evil.
与智夫的宣传合作了一处，近来游荡的风气竟在 AD 法政专门学校的教职员中间流行起来。这样说着，智夫就把两手和身体扶上碧桃的肩上去。碧桃把身子向左边一避，智夫却按了一个空。
In cooperation with the hostage's propaganda, the recent trend of loitering has become popular among the faculty and staff of the Legal and Political College in A. In cooperation with the hostage's propaganda, the recent trend of loitering has become popular among the faculty and staff of the Legal and Political College in A. Saying this, the hostage put his hands and body on Bitao's shoulders. Bitao ducked to the left, but the hostage pressed an empty button.
倒在书盒的背上，大家都笑起来。碧桃也笑得坐不住了，就站了起来逃。智夫追了2圈，才把他捉住，拿住了他的一只手。智夫就把他拖上床去，两个身体在叠着烟盘的一边睡下之后。
Falling on Shuha's back, everyone laughed. Bitao laughed so hard that she couldn't sit still, so she stood up and ran away. The hostage chased her twice before catching her. Falling on Shuha's back, everyone laughed. Bitao laughed so hard that she couldn't sit still, so she stood up and ran away. The hostage chased her twice before catching her. After holding one of her hands, the hostage dragged her onto the bed, and the two bodies fell asleep on the side where the cigarette tray was stacked.
智夫便轻轻地对他说，这几句话说得倪龙安心动起来，他那苍黄瘦长的脸上也露了一脸微笑说，这一次风潮之后，学校里的空气变得灰颓得很，教职员见了学生的面，总感着一种压迫。
The hostage said to her gently. These few words made Ni Longan's heart beat, and a smile appeared on his long, yellow face and he said, Dash. After this incident, the air in the school became very gray. When faculty and staff meet students, they always feel oppressed.
智夫没有办法，把他的小手拿到嘴边上，轻轻地咬了一口，就对他说。智夫接着说，智夫回答他说，智夫和尼吾二人到了海棠房里，他的床上已经有一个烟盘摆好在那里。
The hostage had no choice but to bring her little hand to her mouth, took a bite, and said to her, Dash. The hostage continued. The hostage answered him. The hostage and Ni Wu arrived at Haitang's room. There was already a cigarette tray placed on her bed.
他们三人在床上烧了一会烟，程书和也来了。书和的年纪约在30内外，也是一个瘦长的人，脸上有几颗红点，戴着一副近视眼镜，嘴角上似有若无的常含着些微笑。
The three of them burned cigarettes on the bed for a while, and Uncle Cheng also came. Shuha is about 30 years old. He is also a slender man with a few red spots on his face. He wears a pair of myopic glasses and has a faint smile at the corner of his mouth.
因为他是何珠的侄女清官人碧桃的客人，所以大家都叫他做侄女婿。原来这陆河班里最红的姑娘就是何珠，其次是碧桃，但是碧桃的红不过是因何珠而来的。制服看了何珠那俊俏的面庞。
Because he was the guest of Heju's niece Bitao, an upright official, everyone called him niece-in-law. It turns out that this dear and the most popular girl in the class are Heju. Next is Bitao, but the redness of Bitao comes only from the lotus beads. The hostage looked at Heju's handsome face.
似笑非笑的形容，带些红黑色的强壮的肉色，不长不短的身材，心里虽然爱他，但是因他太红了，所以他的劫富济贫的精神总不许他对何珠怀着好感。吴峰氏是何珠微见时候的老客。
She has a description that looks like a smile but not a smile, a strong flesh color with some red and black, and a figure that is neither long nor short. Although he loves her in his heart, he is too red, so his spirit of robbing the rich and giving to the poor will never allow him to be pregnant with Heju. Have a good impression. Wu Fengshe was a regular customer of Heju when he was humble.
进出已经有5、6年了，非但何珠对他有特别的感情，就是陆河班里的主人对他也有些敬畏之心。所以何珠是陆河班里最红的姑娘，吴峰氏是陆河班里最有势力的嫖客，为此2层原因。
It has been 5 or 6 years since he came in and out. Not only did Heju have special feelings for him, but the masters of Lu and the class also had some respect for him. It has been 5 or 6 years since he came in and out. Not only did Heju have special feelings for him, but the masters of Lu and the class also had some respect for him. So Heju is the most popular girl in Lu He's class, and Wu Fengshe is the most powerful prostitute in Lu He's class. This is the second reason.
陆河班里的绰号都是以何珠、峰氏做中心点拟成的，这就是程书和的绰号侄女婿的来历。制服听了这话，也长叹了一声，含了悲凉的微笑，对明仙念着说：“制服听了许明仙的话。”
The nicknames of Lu and the class are all drawn up with Heju and Fengshe as the center points. This is the origin of Cheng Shu's nickname niece-in-law. After hearing this, the hostage sighed deeply, smiled sadly, and said to Ming Xian. The hostage listened to Su Mingxian's words.
不知不觉对尼龙安宣传了游荡的福音，并促他也上陆河班去探探翠云的消息。尼龙安听了，却装出了一副惊恐的样子来对制服说。制服听了他那小孩似的轻音，更舍不得放他走。
Unknowingly, he spread the gospel of wandering to Enai Longan, and urged him to go to Luha Ban to find out about Suayan. After hearing this, Enai Longan pretended to be frightened and said to the interrogator, Dash. After hearing her childlike voice, the hostage was even more reluctant to let her go.
便用手去拉着他说：“碧桃，你下来，叫何珠一个人去就对了。你下来同我上你家去。”制服上课的时候，觉得学生的目光都在那里，说：“你还在这里吗？我们都不再可怜你，你也要走了吗？”
Then he pulled her with his hand and said, Bitao, come down and let Heju go alone. Come down and go to your house with me. When Jifu was in class, he felt that the students' eyes were saying, Are you still here? We don't pity you anymore, are you leaving too?
因此，制服一听上课的钟响之后，心里总觉得迟迟不进，与蜂巢前的踊跃的心思却成了一个反对。有几天，他竟有怕与学生见面的日子。一下课堂，他便觉得同从一种苦役放免了的人一样。
Therefore, as soon as Jifu heard the bell ringing for class, he always felt that he was delaying progress, and his courageous thoughts before the trend became an objection. There were days when he was actually afraid of meeting the students. As soon as he got out of class, he felt like someone who had been released from a kind of hard labor.
感到几分轻快，但一想明天又要去上课，又要去看那些学生的不关心的脸色，心里就苦闷起来。到这时候，他就不得不跑进城去，或上那姓杨的教门馆去谋一个醉保，或到海棠那里去消磨半夜光阴。
I felt a little light, but when I thought about going to class again tomorrow and seeing the unconcerned faces of those students, I felt depressed. At this time, he had to run into the city, or go to the Jiaomen Hall named Yang to get drunk and have a good meal, or go to Haitang's place to spend the middle of the night.
所以蜂巢结束，第2次搬进学校之后，制服总每天不得不进城去，看看他的同事，他也觉得他们是同他一样的，在那里受精神上的苦痛。许明先走开之后，制服便轻轻地对龙安说。
So the trend ended, and after moving into the school for the second time, Jifu always had to go to the city every day. Looking at his colleagues, he felt that they were suffering the same mental pain as him. After Su Mingxian walked away, the hostage said softly to Longan.
第二天是星期六，下午没有课的。智夫吃完了午饭，便跑进龙安的房里去，悄悄地对龙安说。程书和笑着问碧桃说。程书和到后，风氏就命海棠摆好桌子来打牌。正在摆桌子的时候
The next day is Saturday and there are no classes in the afternoon. After the hostage finished his lunch, he ran into Long An's room and said quietly to Longan. Qing Shuhe smiled and asked Bitao. After Qing Shuhe arrived, Feng Shi ordered Haitang to set up the table to play cards. While setting the table,
门外忽发了一阵乱喊的声音，碧桃跳进海棠的房里来了。碧桃刚跳出来，智夫同时也跑了过去，把她紧紧地抱住，一步一步地抱到床前。智夫就把碧桃推在程书和身上说。
Suddenly there was a burst of shouting outside the door, and Bai Tao jumped into Haitang's room. As soon as Bai Tao jumped out, her hostage also ran over and hugged her tightly. Carrying her to the bed step by step, the hostage pushed Bitao onto Qing Shuhe and said.
碧桃用了她的还没有变拙的小孩的喉音说：“哦，你来了吗？先请家去坐一坐，我们现在上第一春去出局去，就回来的。”碧桃光着眼睛，尖了嘴，装着了怒容，用力回答说。
Bitao said in the voice of a child that had not yet become dull, "Oh, are you here? Please go sit down first. We will go out in the first spring and come back soon." Bitao's eyes were bare, her mouth was pointed, and she pretended to be angry and replied forcefully, "Dash."
碧桃也伸出了一只小手来把智夫的手捏住说。正是这时候，智夫和吴风氏、倪龙安慢慢地走下了长街，在金钱巷口向四面看了一回，便匆匆地跑进去了。他们进巷走了2步。
Bitao also stretched out a small hand to squeeze the hostage's hand and said, "Dash." At this time, Jifu, Wu Fengshi, and Ni Longan slowly walked down the long street. At the entrance of Qianqian Lane, they looked around and then hurried in. They took 2 steps into the alley.
兜头遇着了一乘飞跑的人力车，智夫举头一看，却是碧桃、何珠2人。碧桃穿着银灰缎子的长袍，罩着一件黑色的铁鸡缎的小背心，歪戴了一顶圆形的瓜皮帽，坐在何珠的身上。
Duo 2 met a speeding rickshaw. The hostage raised his head and saw that it was Bitao and Hezhu. Bitao was wearing a silver-gray satin robe, a black iron satin vest, and a round melon pipe hat tilted to one side, sitting on Hezhu's body.
他那长不长方不方的小脸上，常有一层红白颜色浮着，一双目光摄人的大眼睛，在这黑暗的夜色里同宵无似的尽在那里凝视过路的人。智夫一则因为他年纪尚小，天真烂漫。
Her little face, which is neither rectangular nor square, often has a layer of red and white floating on it, and a pair of big, piercing eyes stare at passers-by like an owl in the dark night. The hostage was because she was still young and naive.
二则因为他有些地方很像吴池生，本来是比海棠还要喜欢他，在这地方遇着，一见了这种样子，更加觉得痛爱，所以就赶上前去，一把拉住了那人力车，叫着说：“桌子摆好了，吴风氏、倪龙安。”
Secondly, because she looked like Wu Qixing in some places, I originally liked her even more than Haitang. When I met her in this place, I felt even more in love with her when I saw her like this, so I rushed over and grabbed her. The rickshaw stopped and shouted, "Dash." The table is set, Wu Fengshi, and I Longan.
程书和就了席坐了。智夫本来不喜欢打牌，并且今晚想和碧桃讲讲闲话，所以就叫海棠代打。有一天，智夫和倪龙安、许明先在那里谈东京的浪漫史的时候，忠厚的许明先红了脸，发了一声叹声说
Uncle Cheng took a seat at the table. The hostage originally didn't like playing cards and wanted to chat with Bitao tonight, so he asked Haitang to play for him. One day, when Jifu, Ni Longan, and Su Mingxian were talking about the romantic history of Tokyo, the loyal Su Mingxian blushed and sighed, "Dash."
日短的冬天下午6点钟的时候 ，A 城的市街上已完全呈出夜景来了。最热闹的大街上，两面的店家都点上了电灯，掌柜的大口李清清地嚼着饭后的余粒，呆呆地站在柜台的周围。
At 6 o'clock in the afternoon during the short winter days, the streets of City A were completely transformed into a night scene. On the busiest street, the shops on both sides were lit with electric lights. The shopkeeper chewed the remaining grains after the meal and stood blankly around the counter.
在那里看来往的行人，有一个女人走过的时候，他们就交头接耳地谈笑起来。从乡下出到省城里来的人，手里捏着烟管，慢慢地在4、5尺宽的街上东望西看地走。人力车夫接铃接铃地响着车铃。
Watch the passers-by there. When a woman passed by, they started talking and laughing. People who came to the provincial capital for the first time from the countryside held a pipe in their hand and slowly walked around the 4 to 5 foot wide street looking east and west. The rickshaw driver rang the bell after bell after bell.
一边放大了嗓子叫让路、骂人，一边拼命地在那里跑。车上坐的若是女人或妓女，她们叫得更加响，跑得更加快，可怜她们的变态性欲，除了这一刻能得着真正的满足之外。
While shouting loudly to give way and cursing, he ran as fast as he could. If the people in the car are women or prostitutes, they will scream louder and run faster. It is pitiful for their perverted sexual desires. In addition to being truly satisfied at this moment.
大约只有像病毒很多的上昌家去发泄的。狭斜的妓馆巷里，这时候正堆叠着人力车，在黄灰色的光线里呈出活跃的景象来。菜馆的使者拿了小小的条子来之后，那些调和性欲的活佛。
I probably only vent my anger to prostitutes who have a lot of viruses. In the narrow brothel alley, rickshaws were piled up at this time, showing a lively scene in the yellow-gray light. After the messenger from the restaurant came with a small note, those living Buddhas who reconciled sexual desire.
就装得光彩耀人，坐上人力车飞也似的跑去。有饮食店的街上，两边停着几剩杂乱的人力车，空气里散满了油煎鱼肉的香味，在那里引诱游情的中产阶级进去喝酒调娼。有几处菜馆的窗里
Just pretend to be brilliant, get on the rickshaw and run away like flying. On the streets with restaurants, there are a few chaotic rickshaws parked on both sides. The air is filled with the smell of fried fish, luring the casual middle class to drink and prostitute. There are several restaurant windows.
映着几个男女的影画，在悲凉的胡琴弦管的声音和清脆的肉声传到外边寒冷灰黄的空气里来。底下站着一群无产的肉欲追求者，在那里隔水闻香。也有做了认真的面色，蘸着尝那肉声的滋味的。
Reflecting the shadows of several men and women, the sad sound of harp strings and the crisp sound of flesh spread into the cold, gray air outside. A group of proletarian carnal pursuers stood underneath, smelling the fragrance across the water. There were also those who stood with serious expressions and tasted the sound of flesh.
也有叫一声绝望的好，就慢慢走开的。原来许明先接了陆校长的任，他们同事都比他做赵匡胤。这一次的风潮，他们叫做陈桥兵变，因此制服就把许明先的旧号称作了皇后。他们四人坐下之后
There are also those who just scream in despair and walk away slowly. It turns out that Su Mingxian took over as Principal Lu, and his colleagues were all better than him as Zhao Kuangyin. They called this wave of rebellion the Chen Xiao Mutiny. Therefore, the hostage called Su Mingxian's old friend the Queen. After the four of them sat down.
制服就走上坐在舒和背后的碧桃身边，轻轻地说：“金老爷，那陆河班里，我也有一个女人在那里，几时带你去逛去罢，顺便也可以探探翠云皇后的消息。那么你快回来，我有要紧的话要和你说。”
The hostage walked up to Bai Tao, who was sitting behind Uncle He, and said softly, Master Jean. In Luha class, I also have a woman there. I'll take you for a walk sometime. We can also find out about Queen Suiyin. Then come back quickly, I have something important to tell you.
何珠回来没有？色胆天样的大。我教员可以不做，但是我的自由却不愿意被道德来束缚。学生能嫖，难道先生就嫖不得吗？那些想以道德来攻击我们的反对党，你若仔细去调查调查。
Is he Zhu back? You are so bold. I don't have to do it as a teacher, but I don't want my freedom to be restricted by morality. Students can have sex, but why can't teachers do it? If you investigate those opposition parties who want to attack us on moral grounds carefully.
恐怕更下流的事情，他们也在那里干呀。第一春，碧桃，你还在气我吗？碧桃，你上什么地方去？碧桃，你是真的发了气呢，还是假的？真的便怎么样？真的吗？哎，真的，由你怎么样来弄我爸？是谁叫的？
I'm afraid they are doing even more obscene things there. The first spring. Bitao, are you still angry with me? Bitao, where are you going? I'm afraid they are doing even more obscene things there. The first spring. Bitao, are you still angry with me? Bitao, where are you going? Bitao, are you really angry or are you pretending? What if it's really like that? Really? Warm. Really, it's up to you how you do it to me. Who called it?
上有提袍赠，英莲范书函，不知天下事，犹作不一看。对不起，你先去吧，我就回来的，最多请你等15分钟。舒和，究竟碧桃是你的人？刚才我在路上撞见，叫他回来，他怎么也不肯。现在你一到这里
There is still a silk robe as a gift, so I should pity Fan Shuhan. I don't know that the world's scholars still look at it as a commoner. I'm sorry, you go ahead and I'll be back. Please wait for 15 minutes at most. Uncle He, Jing Bitao is yours after all. There is still a silk robe as a gift, so I should pity Fan Shuhan. I don't know that the world's scholars still look at it as a commoner. I'm sorry, you go ahead and I'll be back. Please wait for 15 minutes at most. Uncle he, Jing Bitao is yours after all. I bumped into her on the road just now and asked her to come back, but she refused. Now as soon as you get here.
你看他马上就跳了回来。你真好大的胆子，万一被学生撞见了，你怎么好？你在什么地方出局？但是总应该隐秘些。今晚上我约定在海棠房里替他打一次牌，你也算一个搭子吧。一个是无风氏。
You see, she jumped back right away. You are so brave. What will you do if you are caught by a student? Where did you get out? But it should always be more secretive. I have agreed to play cards for her in Haitang's room tonight, and you can be considered a match. One is Wu Fengshi.
一个是风氏的朋友，我们叫他侄女婿的程书和，你认得他不认得？现在我进城去了，在风氏家里等你，你吃过晚饭，马上就进城来。人生的聚散真奇怪得很。5、6年前，我正在放荡的时候。
One is Fengshi's friend, Qing Shuhe, whom we call niece-in-law. Do you recognize him? Now I'm going into the city and waiting for you at Fengshi's house. After you have dinner, I'll come into the city right away. The gatherings and separations of life are so strange. 5 or 6 years ago, I was having a wild time.
有一个要好的妓女，无意中我昨天在朋友的席上遇见了。坏妓女在5、6年前总要算是 AD 第一个阔窑子，后来跟了一个小白脸跑走了，失了踪迹。昨天席上我忽然见了她那一种憔悴的形容。
There is a prostitute whom I am very close to, and I unexpectedly met her at a friend's table yesterday. The bad prostitute was the first prosperous brothel in land A 5 or 6 years ago, but then she ran away with a pretty boy and disappeared. There is a prostitute whom I am very close to, and I unexpectedly met her at a friend's table yesterday. The bad prostitute was the first prosperous brothel in land A 5 or 6 years ago, but then she ran away with a pretty boy and disappeared. Yesterday at the banquet, I suddenly saw her haggard expression.
倒吃了一惊。他说那小白脸已经死了，现在他改名翠云，仍在陆河班里接课。他看了我的粗布衣服，好像也很为我担忧似的，问我现在怎么样。我故意垂头丧气地说我也潦倒的不堪。
I was surprised. She said that the pretty girl was dead, and now she changed her name to Tsueyin, and she was still picking up customers in Luha class. She looked at my coarse clothes and seemed to be worried about me, and asked me how I was doing now. I said deliberately dejectedly. I am also very depressed.
道难为他为我洒了一点同情的眼泪，并且叫我闲空的时候上他那里去逛去。不晓得是真的吗？那么我就爱死你了。这样的说了一句，制服就狠命的把他紧抱了一下，并且把嘴拿进碧桃的脸上。
Not surprisingly, she shed a few tears of sympathy for me and taught me to hang out at her place when I had free time. I don't know. Is it true? Then I love you to death. Not surprisingly, she shed a few tears of sympathy for me and taught me to hang out at her place when I had free time. I don't know. Is it true? Then I love you to death. After saying this, the hostage hugged her tightly and brought his mouth close to Bitao's face.
重重地咬了一口，他脸上忽然挂下了2滴眼泪来。碧桃被他咬了一口，想大声地叫起来，但是朝他一看，见那灵活的眼睛里含住了一泓清水，并且有2滴眼泪已经流在颊上，倒反而吃了一惊。
After taking a hard bite, 2 tears suddenly fell on his face. Bitao was bitten by him and wanted to scream loudly, but when she looked at him, she saw that her flexible eyes held a bottle of water and 2 tears were already flowing on her cheeks. Instead, she was surprised.
就呆住了。制服和他呆看了一呼，就轻轻地叫他说：“碧桃，我有许多话要和你说，但是总觉得说不出来。”又停了一呼，制服就一句一句悠悠地对他说：“我3岁的时候，父亲就死了。”
I was stunned. The hostage stared at her blankly for a moment, then called her softly, Dash. Bitao, I have a lot to say to you, but I always feel like I can't say it. After another pause, the hostage said to her quietly. My father died when I was 3 years old.
那时候我们家里没有钱，穷得很。我在书房里念书，因为先生非常痛我的缘故，常要受学伴的欺，我里又没有气力打他们。不过受了他们的欺之后，总老是一个人哭起来。我若去告诉先生又。
At that time, our family had no money and was very poor. I was studying in the study room, and because my husband hurt me very much, I was often bullied by my classmates. I didn't have the strength to beat them, so after being bullied by them, I would always cry alone. If I go and tell Sir.
那么先生一定要罚他们了。好，你若去告诉一次吧，下次他们欺侮我，一定得更厉害些。我若去告诉母亲里，那么本来在伤心的可怜的我的娘，老要同我俩一道哭起来。为此我受了气。
Then, sir, I must punish them. Okay, if you go and tell me once, they will definitely bully me even more severely next time. If I tell my mother, my poor mother, who is already sad, will always cry with us. I was bullied for this.
也只能一个人把眼泪吞下肚子里去。我从那时候起，就一天一天的变成了一个小胆、没出息、没力量的人。12岁的时候，我见了一个我们街坊的女儿，心里我可是非常爱她，但是我吓。
I can only swallow my tears alone. Since then, I have become a cowardly, hopeless, and powerless person day by day. When I was 12 years old, I met the daughter of our neighbor. I loved her very much, but I can only swallow my tears alone. Since then, I have become a cowardly, hopeless, and powerless person day by day. When I was 12 years old, I met the daughter of our neighbor. I loved her very much, but I was scared.
只能远远地看看她的影子，因为她一进我的身边，我就同要死似的难过。我每天想每晚想了她2年，可是没有面对面地看过她一次。和她说话的时候，不消说是没有了，你说奇怪不奇怪？
I can only look at her shadow from a distance, because as soon as she comes close to me, I feel as sad as death. I thought about her every day and every night for 2 years, but I never saw her face to face. I can only look at her shadow from a distance, because as soon as she comes close to me, I feel as sad as death. I thought about her every day and every night for 2 years, but I never saw her face to face. When talking to her, needless to say, she is gone. Do you think it is strange?
后来她同我的一位学伴要好了，大家都说她的坏话，我心里还常常替她辩护。现在她又嫁了另外的一个男人，听说有3、4个小孩子生下了。14岁进了中学校，又被同学气得不得了。
Later, she got close to one of my schoolmates. Everyone said bad things about her, and I often defended her in my heart. Now she is married to another man, and I heard that she has given birth to 3 or 4 children. When I entered middle school at the age of 14, I was bullied by my classmates again.
18岁跟了我哥哥上日本去，只是跑来跑去的，跑了7、8年。他们日本人呀，气我可更厉害了。到了今年秋天，我才拖了这一个，你瞧吧，半死的身体回中国来。在上海里，不意中遇着了一个朋友。
When I was 18 years old, I went to Japan with my brother and just ran around for 7 or 8 years. They Japanese, they bullied me even more. It wasn't until this fall that I dragged this one back to China, and lo and behold, my half-dead body came back to China. In Shanghai, I met a friend by accident.
他也是姓吴，他的样子同你不差什么，不魁人还要比你小些。他病了，他的脸苍白得很，但是也很好看，好像透明的白玻璃似的。他说话的时候呀，声音也和你一样。同他在上海玩了半个月。
His surname is also Wu. His appearance is not much different from yours, and he is even younger than you. He was sick, and his face was very pale, but it was also beautiful, like transparent white glass. When he speaks, his voice is the same as yours. I spent half a month in Shanghai with him.
我才知道以后我是少他不来了，但是和他一块儿住不上几天，这儿的朋友又打电报来催我上这儿来，我就不得不和他分开。我上船的那一天晚上，他来送我上船的时候，你猜怎么着？我们俩人哪？
Only then did I realize that I would miss him in the future. But after living with him for only a few days, my friends here sent telegrams urging me to come here, so I had to separate from him. The night I boarded the boat, when he came to see me off, guess what? The 2 of us.
这样的抱住了，整哭了半夜呀。到了这2个月多，忙也忙得很，干的事情也没有味儿，我还没有写信去给他。现在天气冷了，我怕他的病又要坏起来呢。半个月前头，由吴老爷替我介绍。
I hugged her like this and cried for half the night. I've been here for more than 2 months, and I'm very busy and the things I do are boring. I haven't written to him yet. Now that the weather is getting colder, I'm afraid that his illness will get worse again. Mr. Wu introduced it to me half a month ago.
我才认得海棠和你。海棠相貌又不美，人又笨，客人又没有。我心里虽在痛他，想帮他一点忙，可是我也没有许多的钱可以赎他出去。你这样的乖，这样的可爱，我看见了你。
I just recognized Haitang in you. Haitang is not beautiful, she is stupid, and she has no guests. Although I feel sorry for her and want to help her, I don't have a lot of money to redeem her. You are so good, so cute, I saw you.
就仿佛见我的朋友姓吴的似的，但是你呀，你又不是我的人。因为你和海棠在一个班子里，我又不好天天来找你说什么话，你又是很忙的，我就是来也不容易和你时常见面，今天难得和你遇见了。
It's like seeing my friend named Wu, but you are not mine. Because you and Haitang are in the same team, I can't come to you every day to talk to you, and you are very busy. Even if I come here, it's not easy for me to meet you often. It's rare for me to meet you today.
你又是这样的有气了，你说我难受不难受？赤福悠悠扬扬地诉说了一番，说的碧桃也把2只眼睛合了下去。 制服看了他这副小孩似的悲哀的样子，心里更觉得痛哀，便又拼命地紧紧抱了一回。
You are so angry again. Do you think I feel uncomfortable? The hostage spoke in a long and melodious way, which made Bai Tao close her eyes. Seeing her childlike sad look, the hostage felt even more loved in his heart, and he tried his best again. Hug him tightly.
制服正想把嘴拿上他脸上去的时候，坐在打牌的4个人忽而大叫了起来。碧桃和制服2人也同时跳出大床，走进打牌的桌子边上去。原来程书和赢了一副3番的大牌，大家都在那里喝彩。
When the hostage was about to put his mouth on her face, 4 people were sitting playing cards. Suddenly he shouted. Bitao and Jifu also jumped out of the big bed at the same time and approached the card table. It turned out that Uncle Cheng had won a triple deck of cards, and everyone was cheering.
不多一呼，何珠回来了。吴峰氏就叫他代打，他同制夫走上烟铺上睡倒了。制夫忽想起了许明先说的翠云，就问着说：“峰氏，这班子里有一个翠云，你认识不认识？”吴峰氏呆了一呆说：“你问他干什么？”
Not long after, Hezhu came back. Wu Fengshe asked her to fight for him, and he and his husband went to the cigarette shop and fell asleep. The hostage suddenly remembered that Cuiyun Su Mingxian had mentioned, and asked. Not long after, Hezhu came back. Wu Fengshe asked her to fight for him, and he and his husband went to the cigarette shop and fell asleep. The hostage suddenly remembered that Cuiyun Su Mingxian had mentioned, and asked. Fengshe, there is Cuiyun in this team, do you know him? Wu Fengshe was stunned for a moment and said.
我打算为龙安去叫他过来。好极好极。吴峰氏便命海棠的嫁母去请翠云姑娘过来。翠云半老了，脸色苍黄，一副憔悴的形容，令人容易猜想到她的过去的浪漫史上去。纤长的身体，瘦得很。
I plan to call her over for Longan. Excellent, excellent. Wu Fengshe ordered Haitang's fake mother to invite Miss Cuiyun over. Cuiyun was half old, with a sallow face and a haggard appearance, which made it easy to guess her past romantic history. Slender the body is very thin.
一双狭长的眼睛里常有盈盈的2红清水浮着，梳妆也非常潦草，有几条散乱的发丝挂在额上，穿的是一件天津花缎的棉袄，花样已不流行了，底下是一条黑缎子的大脚裤。他进海棠房里之后
There are often 2 clear pools of clear water floating in a pair of narrow eyes. Her makeup is also very sloppy. There are a few scattered hair hanging on her forehead. She is wearing a sky blue satin cotton jacket. The pattern is no longer popular. It's a pair of black satin pants. After she entered Haitang's room.
制夫就叫碧桃为龙安带了牌，自家做了一个介绍，让龙安和翠云倒在烟铺上睡下。制夫和翠云、龙安、封氏讲了几句闲话，便走到碧桃的背后去看他打牌。海棠的贾母拿了一张椅子过来，让他坐了。
The hostage asked Bitao to take the place of cards for Longan, and he made an introduction and asked Longan and Cuiyun to lie down on the cigarette shop and sleep. Jifu chatted with Cuiyun, Longan and Fengshe for a few words, then walked behind Bai Tao to watch her play cards. Haitang's fake mother brought a chair for him to sit on.
制夫坐下看了一壶，渐渐把身体靠了过去。过了15、16分钟，他却和碧桃坐在一张椅子上了。他用一只手环抱着碧桃的腰部，一只手在那里帮他拿牌。
The hostess sat down and looked at it for a while, then gradually leaned over. After 15 or 6 minutes, he sat on the same chair as Bitao. He put one hand around Bitao's waist and helped her hold the cards with one hand.
不拿牌的时候，制夫就把那只手摸到他的身上去。碧桃只做不知，默默的不想。打牌打到11点钟，大家都不愿意再打下去。收了场，摆好一桌酒菜，他们就坐拢来吃。
When she wasn't holding the cards, the hostage would put his hand on her body. Bai Tao just pretended not to know and remained silent. The card game lasted until 11 o'clock, and no one wanted to continue playing. After the meal was over and a table of wine and food was set, they sat down to eat.
制夫因为今天和碧桃讲了一场话，心里觉得凄凉，又觉得痛快，就拼命地喝起酒来。这也奇怪，他今天晚上愈喝酒愈觉得神经清明起来，怎么也喝不醉。大家喝了几杯，就猜起拳来。今天制夫是东家。
Because Jifu had a conversation with Bitao today, he felt desolate and happy at the same time, so he started drinking hard. This is strange. The more he drank tonight, the more alert he felt. He couldn't get drunk no matter what. Everyone after a few drinks, I started playing guessing games. Today the hostage is the host.
所以先由制夫打了一个通关。碧桃叫了3拳，输了3拳。制夫看他不会喝酒，倒替他喝了2杯。海棠输了2拳，制夫也替他带了1杯酒。喝酒喝得差不多了，制夫就叫拿稀饭来，个人吃了1、2碗稀饭。
So the hostage had to clear the level first. Bai Tao called for 3 punches, but lost 3 punches. Seeing that she didn't know how to drink, the hostage drank 2 drinks for her. Haitang lost 2 punches, and her hostage gave her a glass of wine instead. When they were almost done drinking, the hostage asked for porridge. Everyone ate 1 or 2 bowls of rice porridge.
席就散了，躺在床上的烟盘边上抽了2口烟，智夫就说：“今天龙安第一次和翠云相会，我们应该到翠云房里去坐一会儿。”大家赞成了，就一同上翠云房里去，说了一阵闲话，程书和走了。智夫和龙安。
The banquet was dispersed. Lying on the bed next to the cigarette tray and taking 2 puffs of cigarette, the hostage said, "Today Longan meets Tsueyun for the first time. We should go to Tsueyun's room and sit for a while." Everyone agreed and went to Tsueyun's room together. After chatting for a while, Uncle Cheng left. Jifu and Longan.
风氏正要走的时候，何珠的贾母忽来对智夫说：“于老爷，有一件事情要同你商量，请你上海棠姑娘房里来一次。”智夫莫名其妙，就跟上她上海棠房里去。智夫一走进房，海棠的贾母就避开了。
When Feng Shi was about to leave, Hiju's fake mother suddenly came and said to her husband, "Master Yu, I have something to discuss with you. Please come to Miss Shanghai Tang's room." The hostage was confused, so he followed her into Haitang's room. As soon as the hostage entered the room, Haitang's fake mother avoided her.
何珠的贾母先笑了一脸，慢慢地对智夫说：“于老爷，我今晚有一件事情要对你说，不晓得你肯不肯赏脸？你说出来吧。我想替你做媒，请你今晚上留在这里过夜。”智夫正在惊异，没有作答的时候，
Hiju's fake mother smiled at first and then slowly said to her husband, "Mr. Yu, I have something to tell you tonight. I wonder if you are willing to give me a favor? Say it." Hiju's fake mother smiled at first and then slowly said to her husband, "Mr. Yu, I have something to tell you tonight. I wonder if you are willing to give me a favor? Say it. I want to be your matchmaker and ask you to stay here tonight." The hostage was surprised and made no reply.
他就笑着说：“你已答应了，多谢多谢。”听了这话，海棠的贾母也走了出来，匆匆忙忙地对智夫说：“于老爷，谢谢，我去对你老爷吴老爷说一声，请他们先回去。”智夫听了这话，
She smiled and said, "You have already agreed, thank you very much." After hearing this, Haitang's fake mother also came out and hurriedly said to her husband, "Mr. Yu, thank you. I'll go and tell Mr. and I, Mr. Wu, and ask them to go back first." The hostage heard this.
看他3脚2步地走出门去了，心里就觉得不快活起来。智夫叫等一等，他却同不听见一样，径自出门去了。智夫就站了起来，想追出去，却被何珠的贾母一把拖住，说：“你何必出去？由他们回去就对了。”
Watch her walk out the door in 3 steps. I felt unhappy in my heart. The hostage asked him to wait, but she went out as if he didn't hear him. The hostage stood up and wanted to chase him out, but was held back by Hiju's fake mother and said, "Dash. Why do you have to go out? Just let them go back."
智夫心里这起急来，想出去又难以为情，想不去又觉得不好。正在苦闷的时候，龙安却同风氏走了进来。风氏笑微微地问智夫说：“你今晚留在这里吗？”智夫急得脸红了，便咯咯地回答说：“
The hostess became anxious. He felt embarrassed if he wanted to go out, and felt bad if he couldn't. When he was depressed, Longan walked in with Feng Shi. Feng Shishao asked his husband slightly, "Are you staying here tonight?" The hostage blushed with anxiety, and replied giggling,
那是什么话？我定要回去的。何珠的贾母便指着智夫说：“于老爷，你不是答应我了吗？怎么又要变卦？”智夫又咯咯地说：“什么话？什么话？我何尝答应你来？”龙安青了脸，跑到智夫面前。
"What are those words? I must go back." Hiju's fake mother restrained the hostage and said, "Master Yu, didn't you promise me? Why change your mind again?" The hostage said, giggling again, "What words, what words, How could I agree to your coming?" Longan turned pale and ran to the hostage.
用了日本话对智夫说：“智夫，我同你是休妻相关的，你今晚怎么也不应该在这里过夜。第一，我们的反对党可怕得很；第二，在这等地方，总以不过夜为事，免得人家轻笑你好色。”智夫听了这话，
He said to his hostage in Japanese, "Host, you and I are closely related. There is no way you should spend the night here tonight. Firstly, our opposition party is terrible. Secondly, in places like this, it is always better not to stay overnight, so as not to make others laugh. You're lustful." The hostage heard this.
就同大梦初醒的一样，决心要回去，一边用了英文对风氏说：“这是一种侮辱，他们太看我不起了。 难道我对海棠那样的姑娘还恋她的姿色不成？风氏听了便对制服好意地说：“这倒不是这样的。”
Just like waking up from a big dream, he was determined to go back, and said to Feng Shi in English, "This is an insult. They look down upon me too much. Do I still love a girl like Haitang because of her beauty?" After hearing this, Feng Shi said kindly to his interrogator, "That's not the case.
人家都知道你对海棠是一种哀怜，你要留宿也没有什么大问题的。你若不愿意，也可以同我们一同回去的。”龙安又用了日本话对制服说：“我是负了责任来劝你的，无论如何，请你同我回去。”
Everyone knows that you feel pity for Haitang. It's no big problem if you want to stay overnight. If you don't want to, you can go back with us. Longan said to the hostage again in Japanese, "I have taken the responsibility to persuade you. Please come back with me no matter what."
海棠的贾母早已看出龙安的样子来了，便跑出去把翠云叫了过来，托翠云把龙安叫开去。龙安与翠云跑出去后，制服一边觉得被人家一做了好色者，心里感着一种侮辱，一边却也有些好奇心。
Haitang's fake mother had already seen Longan's appearance, so she ran out and called Suayan over, and asked Suayan to call Longan away. After Longan and Shuiyun ran out, the hostage felt insulted by being suspected of being a lecher, but he also felt a little curious.
想看看中国妓女的肉体，他正脸涨得绯红，决不定主意的时候，龙安又跑了进来。这一闪，龙安却变了态度。制服举眼对他一看，用了目光问他计策的时候，他便说：“去留由你自家决定吧。”
"I want to see the body of a Chinese prostitute." Just when he was blushing and undecided, Longan ran in again. At this moment, Longan changed his attitude. The hostage raised his eyes to look at him. When I asked him about his strategy with his eyes, he said, "It's up to you to decide whether to stay or not."
但是你若要在这里过夜，这是千万要守秘密。制服也含糊答应说：“我只怕两件事情，第一就是怕病，第二就是怕以后的纠葛。”龙安又用了日本话回答说：“竹杠他是不敢敲的。”
"But if you want to spend the night here, you must keep it a secret." The hostage also vaguely agreed, "I am only afraid of two things. The first is that I am afraid of illness, and the second is that I am afraid of future entanglements. But if you want to spend the night here, you must keep it a secret." The hostage also vaguely agreed, "I am only afraid of two things. The first is that I am afraid of illness, and the second is that I am afraid of future entanglements." Longan replied in Japanese again. She doesn't dare to take advantage of the situation.
你明天走的时候付他20块钱就对了。他以后要你买什么东西，你可以不答应的。制服红了脸，失了主意，迟疑不决的正在想的时候，河珠的贾母、海棠的贾母和翠云就把风氏、龙安两人拉了出去。
Just pay her 20 yuan when you leave tomorrow. You don't have to agree to whatever she wants you to buy in the future. The hostage blushed and lost his mind. When he was thinking hesitantly, Heju's fake mother, Haitang's fake mother and Suayan pulled Feng Shilongan out.
一边海棠走进了房，含着了一脸忠厚的微笑，对着制服坐下了。4. 海棠房里只剩下制服、海棠二人。制服因为刚才的去留问题，肾经已被他们搅乱了，所以不愿意说话。
At the same time, Haitang walked into the room, with a loyal smile on his face, and sat down facing his hostage. 4. Only the hostage Haitang and his wife were left in Haitang's room. The hostage was already disturbed by them because of the issue of his stay and whereabouts, so he was unwilling to speak.
鲁顿的海棠也只呆呆地坐着，不说一句话。制服只听见房外有几声脚步声，和大门口有几声叫唤声传来。被这沉默的空气一压，制服的脑筋觉得渐渐镇静下去。停了一呼，
The dull Haitang just sat there blankly without saying a word. The hostage only heard a few footsteps outside the room and a few calls from the door. Suppressed by the silent air, the hostage's mind gradually calmed down. There was a pause.
海棠的贾母走进房来，轻轻地对制服说：“于老爷，对不起得很，监壁房里有海棠的一个客人在那里打牌，请你等一呼，等他去了再睡。”制服默默地坐了30分钟，觉得无聊起来。
Haitang's fake mother came into the room and gently confronted her husband. "Master Yu, I'm very sorry. There is a guest from Haitang playing cards in the next room. Please wait for a while until he goes to sleep." The hostage sat in silence for 30 minutes, feeling bored.
便命海棠的贾母去拿鸦片烟来烧。他一个人在烧鸦片烟的时候，海棠就出去了。烧来烧去，制服终究烧不好，好容易烧好了一口。吸完之后，海棠跑了进来，对贾母悠悠地说：“制服看看海棠。”
He ordered Haitang's false mother to get opium smoke to burn. While he was burning opium cigarettes alone, Haitang went out. It burned again and again, but Jihu couldn't burn it well after all. He finally managed to take a sip. He ordered Haitang's false mother to get opium smoke to burn. While he was burning opium cigarettes alone, Haitang went out. It burned again and again, but Jihu couldn't burn it well after all. He finally managed to take a sip. After inhaling, Haitang ran in and said quietly to the fake mother. The hostage looked at Haitang.
竟是呆呆在坐在那里，他心里却觉得不快，跑上去对他说了一声。他就一个人把衣服脱了来睡了。海棠只是不来睡，坐了一会，却拿了一副骨牌出来，好像在那里卜卦的样子。
Sitting there blankly, he felt unhappy in his heart and ran up to her and said something. He just took off his clothes and went to sleep alone. Haitang just didn't come to sleep. After sitting for a while, she took out a set of dominoes, as if she was doing divination there.
制服看了他这一种愚笨的迷信，心里又好气又好笑。制服本来是小胆并且有虚荣心的人，听了这话，故意装了一种恬淡的样子说。制服心里这样一想，就忽而想得他可怜起来，把烟盘收好。
The hostage saw this stupid superstition of hers and felt angry and amused at the same time. The hostage was originally a timid and vain person. After hearing this, he deliberately pretended to be indifferent and said, dash. When the hostess thought this, he suddenly felt pity for her. Put away the cigarette tray.
被褥铺好之后，那贾母就带上了门出去了。心里这样一想，制服就朝了转来，对海棠一看，这时候海棠还开着眼睛，像天睡在那里。制服觉得自家脸上红了一红，对他笑了一脸。
After the bedding was laid out, the fake mother closed the door and went out. With this thought in his mind, the hostage turned around and looked at Haitang. At this time, Haitang was still sleeping there with her eyes open and facing the sky. The hostage felt his face turn red and smiled at her.
就把他的两只手压住了。他也已经理会了制服的心，轻轻地把身体动了一动。贾母就催说，他就决定今晚上在这里陪他过一夜，绝对不去蹂躏他的肉体。过了半点钟，他也脱下衣服来睡了。
He pinned her 2 hands down. She had already understood Jifu's thoughts and moved her body slightly. The false mother urged. He decided to spend the night with her here tonight and would never ravage her body. After half an hour, she also took off her clothes and went to sleep.
制服让他睡好之后，用了回巾替他颈项回得好好，把他爱抚了一回，就叫他睡，自家却把头朝开了。过了30分钟的样子，制服心中觉得自家高尚得很，便想这样的好好睡一夜，永不去侵犯他的肉体。
After the hostage let her sleep well, he used a towel to wrap around her neck, caressed her once, and then told her to sleep. But I turned my head away. After 30 minutes, Jifu felt that his family was very noble, so he wanted to sleep well all night like this and never violate her body.
但是他遇这样的享誉睡不着，又过了一呼，他心里却起了冲突来了。我这样的高尚，有谁晓得？这是讲出去，外边的人谁能相信？海棠那蠢物，你再联系他，他哪里能够了解你的心？还是做俗人吧。
But the more he thought about it, the more he couldn't sleep. After a while, a conflict arose in his heart. Who knows that I am such a noble person? If I tell anyone about this, no one outside will believe it. That idiot Haitang, you pity her, how can she understand your heart? Just be a common person.
大约他是不愿意的，否则何以这样的不肯睡呢？可怜你这皮肉的生涯，这皮肉的生涯，我真是以金钱来揉人的禽兽呀！他去了，于老爷，请睡吧。不要紧，迟一呼睡有什么？本来是变态的制夫。
She probably didn't want to, otherwise why would she be so unwilling to sleep? Pity your skinny life. This skinny career. I am really a beast that uses money to ravage people. He went. Master you, please go to sleep. It doesn't matter, there's nothing wrong with sleeping late. He was originally a perverted hostage.
并且曾经经过沧海的他，觉得海棠的肉体绝对不像个妓女。他的脸上仍旧是无神经似的在那里向上呆看。不过到后来，他的眼忽然连接的开闭了几次，微微的吐了几口气。
And having been through the sea before, he felt that Haitang's body definitely didn't look like a prostitute. Her face was still staring upward as if she had no nerves. But then her eyes suddenly opened and closed several times in succession, and she took a few breaths.
那时窗外已经白灰灰的亮起来了。哦，久旱的天气忽下了一阵微雨，灰黑的天空呈出寒冬的气象来。北风吹到半空的电线上的时候，呜呜的响声刺入人的心骨里去，无眠衣的穷民。
By then the window was already dimly lit. 5. After a long period of dry weather, it suddenly started to rain lightly. The gray-black sky gave off a wintry atmosphere. When the north wind blows on the power lines in the air, the whining sound pierces people's hearts. The poor people without cotton-padded clothes.
又不得不起愁闷的时候到了。 制服自从那一晚在海棠那里过夜之后，觉得学校的事情愈无趣味。一边因为怕人家把自己一做色鬼，所以又不愿再上陆河班去，并且怕纯洁的碧桃。
The time has come when I have to feel depressed again. Ever since he spent the night at Haitang's place, the hostage felt that things at school were becoming more and more boring. On the one hand, because she was afraid that people would suspect her of being a pervert, she didn't want to go to Luha class anymore, and she was also afraid of the pure Bitao.
见了他更看他不起，所以他同犯罪的人一样，不得不在他那里牢狱式的房里蛰居了好几天。那一天午后，天气忽然开朗起来，悠悠的青天仍复蓝碧的同秋空一样。他看看窗外的和煦的冬日。
After seeing him, he looked down upon him even more, so he, like the criminals, had to live in seclusion in his prison-like room for several days. After seeing him, he looked down upon him even more, so he, like the criminals, had to live in seclusion in his prison-like room for several days. That afternoon, the weather suddenly became brighter, and the long blue sky was still as blue and green as the autumn sky. He looked out the window at the warm winter day.
心里觉得怎么也不得不出去一次，但是一进城去，意志薄弱的他又非要到金钱巷去不可。他正在那里想得无聊的时候，忽听见门房传进了几个名片来。
I felt like I had to go out once. But once he entered the city, he was weak-willed and had to go to Money Alley. While he was thinking boredly, he suddenly heard a few business cards coming in from the concierge.
他们原来是城内工业学校和第一中学校的学生，正在发行一种文艺巡刊，前几天曾与制服通过2次信的。制服一看了他们的名片，觉得现在的无聊可以消遣了，就叫门房快请他们进来。
They turned out to be students from the industrial school and the number 1 middle school in the city. They were publishing a literary magazine for 10 days. They had written to the hostage twice a few days ago. As soon as the hostage saw their business cards, he felt that he was bored now and could use some entertainment, so he asked the concierge to invite them in quickly. They turned out to be students from the industrial school and the number 1 middle school in the city. They were publishing a literary magazine for 10 days. They had written to the hostage twice a few days ago. As soon as the hostage saw their business cards, he felt that he was bored now and could use some entertainment, so he asked the concierge to invite them in quickly.
这样的想了一遍，他却悔恨自己的青年时代白白的断送在无情的外国。这几天来，华阳义政会为募集捐款的缘故，办了一个游艺会。制服陪着海棠从菜馆下来的时候
After thinking about it like this, he regretted that his youth was wasted in a ruthless foreign country. In the past few days, the Huayang Charity Relief Association held an entertainment party to collect donations. When the hostess accompanied Haitang down from the restaurant,
已觉得有些昏昏欲睡的样子，胡乱地跟海棠在会场里走了一转，觉得疲倦起来，所以就对海棠说。制服送他上车，自家也雇了一乘人力车上金钱巷去。一到海棠房里，他就觉得想睡，说了2句闲话。
I already felt a little drowsy, and I walked around the venue with Haitang randomly. I felt tired, so I said to Haitang. The hostage sent her to the car, and the family hired a rickshaw to take her to Qianqian Lane. As soon as he arrived in Haitang's room, he felt sleepy. I chatted a few words.
就倒在海棠床上合衣睡着了。制服就回答说，制服因为刚才那孤独的情怀还没有消失，并且又遇着了碧桃，心里就起了一种特别的伤感，所以一时多喝了几杯酒。吃完了饭，碧桃说要回去。
He fell asleep on the begonia bed with his clothes on. The hostage replied. Because the lonely feeling just now had not disappeared, and he met Bai Tao again, Jifu felt a special sadness in his heart, so he drank a few more glasses of wine. After eating, Bitao said she wanted to go back.
制服留他不住，只得放他走了。制服听碧桃上游艺会去了，就也想去看看热闹，所以对海棠说。制服一路走进了游艺会场，遇见了许多红男绿女，心里忽觉得悲戚起来。
The hostage couldn't keep her, so he had to let her go. The hostess heard that Bitao had gone to the entertainment fair, so he also wanted to see the excitement, so he said to Haitang. The hostage walked into the entertainment venue and met many men and women, and suddenly felt sad and lonely in his heart.
走到个女学校的贩卖场的时候，他看见他的一个学生正在与一个良家女子说话，他呆呆地立了一忽，马上就走开了，心里却在说：海棠喜欢得不了得，便梳头擦粉地准备起来。
When he walked to the sales floor of each girl's school, he saw one of his students talking to a girl from a good family. He stood blankly for a moment, then walked away immediately, but he was saying in his heart, Haitang likes it very much. Then I combed my hair and powdered my hair and got ready.
一边贾母却去做了几碗菜来请制服吃夜饭。制服吃完了夜饭，与海棠约定了去游艺会的旧戏场的走廊里相会，一个人就先走了。他们听不清楚，制服就叫他们走出戏场来。在制服周围看戏的人
On the other hand, the fake mother made a few bowls of dishes to treat her husband to dinner. After the hostage finished his supper, he and Hai Tang agreed to meet in the left corridor of the old theater at the entertainment fair, and left alone first. On the other hand, the fake mother made a few bowls of dishes to treat her husband to dinner. After the hostage finished his supper, he and Hai Tang agreed to meet in the left corridor of the old theater at the entertainment fair, and left alone first. They couldn't hear clearly, so the hostage asked them to leave the theater. People watching the show around the hostage.
都对了，他们和制服侧目的看起来了。制服就俯了手，匆匆地从人丛中跑了出来。一跑到宽旷的园里，他仰起头来看看寒冷的碧天，现有一道电灯光线红红地射在半空中。他头朝着了天。
That's right. They and the hostage looked at them sideways. The hostage bowed his head and hurriedly ran out of the crowd. As soon as he ran into the spacious garden, he raised his head and looked at the cold blue sky. There was a red electric light shining in the air. He turned his head towards the sky.
深深地吐了一口，慢慢地跟在他后面的海棠、碧桃也来了。海棠含了冷冷的微笑说：“女校书唱戏也是游艺会里的一种游艺，年纪很轻，喜欢出风头的碧桃，大约对这事是一定很热心的。”
After taking a deep breath, Hai Tang and Bitao slowly followed him. Hai Tang said with a cold smile, "Girls' school singing is also a kind of entertainment in the entertainment fair. Bitao, who is very young and likes to be in the limelight, must be very enthusiastic about it."
在灿烂的电灯光里，喧扰的男女中间，他一个人尽在自伤孤独。在海棠房里坐了一呼，已经是上灯的时刻了。制服问碧桃在不在家，海棠的贾母说：“原来城里有2个研究文艺的团体。”
In the bright electric light, among the noisy men and women, he was alone and hurting himself. After sitting in the begonia room for a while, it was already time to turn on the lamp. When her husband asked Bitao if she was at home, Hai Tang's fake mother said, "It turns out that there are 2 groups studying literature and art in City A."
一个是刚才来过的这几个青年的一团，一个是制服的几个学生和几个已在学校卒业、在社会上干事的人的团体。前者专在研究文艺，后者是带着宣传文化事业的性质的。
One is a group of the young people who came just now, and the other is a group of several students who were hostages and a few people who have graduated from school and are working in society. The former specializes in the study of literature and art, while the latter is in the nature of promoting cultural undertakings.
制服因为学校的关系和个人的趣味上，与后者的一团人接触的机会比较多些，所以他们的一团人竟暗暗里把制服当做了一个指导者看。近来制服因为放荡的结果，
Due to school connections and personal interests, Jifu had more opportunities to come into contact with the latter's group, so their group secretly regarded Jifu as a mentor. Recently, the hostage was the result of his debauchery.
许久不把他们的一团人摆在心里了。刚才见了那几个工业和艺中的青年学生，他心里觉得有些对那一团人不起的地方，所以就打算进城去看看他们。其实这也不过是他自家欺骗自家的口实。
He hadn't kept their group in mind for a long time. He just met those young students from the industrial and number 1 middle schools. He hadn't kept their group in mind for a long time. He just met those young students from the industrial and number 1 middle schools. He felt a little disrespectful towards that group, so he planned to go to the city to see them. In fact, this is just an excuse for him to deceive himself.
他的朦胧的意识里，早有想去看看碧桃、海棠的心思存在了。到了城里，上他们一团人的本部，附设在一高等小学里的新文化书店里去坐了一呼，他就自然而然地走上金钱巷去。几个青年
In his hazy consciousness, he had long wanted to see Bitao and Hai Tang. When he arrived in the city, he went to their group's headquarters, the new culture bookstore attached to a higher elementary school, and sat for a while. Then he naturally walked to Money Alley. Several young people.
都是很有精神。制服听了他们那些生气横溢的谈话，觉得自家惭愧得很。即看到他们的一种像样的样子，制服真想跪下去对他们忏悔一番。他的伤感的情怀一时又征服了他的感情的全部。
They were all very energetic. After listening to their angry conversations, the hostess felt very ashamed. Seeing the way they looked up, the hostage really wanted to kneel down and repent to them. His sad feelings conquered all his emotions for a while.
他便觉得自家是坐在一只半破的航船上，在日暮的大海中漂泊，前面只有黑云大浪，海的彼岸全是死。他心里虽在这样的想，面上却装了一副严正的样子，同他们在那里谈文艺社会各种问题。
He felt that he was sitting on a half-broken ship, drifting in the sea at dusk, with only black clouds and big waves in front of him, and death on the other side of the sea. Although he was thinking this in his heart, he put on a serious look on his face and talked with them about various issues in literature, art, and society.
谈了1个钟头，他们去了。 制服总觉得无聊，所以就换了衣服跑进城去。他心里似乎说，他先上女校书唱戏场去看了一回，却不见碧桃的影子。他的孤独的情怀又进了一层。
After talking for an hour, they went. The hostage always felt bored, so he changed his clothes and ran into the city. He seemed to be saying in his heart. He first went to the girls' school singing theater to see it, but Bai Tao was nowhere to be seen. His loneliness took another level.
便慢慢地走上旧戏场的左边去，向四边一看，海棠还没有来。他推进了座位，坐下去听了一呼戏。台上唱的正是琼林宴。他看到了姓范的什么人醉倒，鬼怪出来的时候，不觉笑了起来。
He slowly walked to the left side of the old theater and looked around. He saw that Hai Tang had not arrived yet. He pushed forward his seat and sat down to listen to a play. The person singing on the stage was Cheong Lin Banquet. He saw a fan named Fan. Someone was drunk, and when the ghost came out, he laughed unconsciously.
以为中国人的神秘思想，却比西洋的还更合于实用。看得正出神的时候，他觉得肩上被人拍了一下。他回过头来一看，见碧桃和海棠站在他背后，对他在那里微笑。他马上站了起来，问他们说
I think the Chinese people's mysterious thoughts are more practical than the Western ones. While he was looking at it, he felt someone tap him on his shoulder. He looked back and saw Bi Tao and Hai Tang standing behind him and smiling at him. I think the Chinese people's mysterious thoughts are more practical than the Western ones. While he was looking at it, he felt someone tap him on his shoulder. He looked back and saw Bi Tao and Hai Tang standing behind him and smiling at him. He immediately stood up and asked them, Dash.
他们三人上场内燕春楼坐下之后，制服偷看了几次碧桃的脸色，因为制服自从那一晚在海棠那里过夜之后，还是第一次遇见碧桃，他怕碧桃待他要与从前变起态度来。
After the three of them sat down in the banquet building, Jifu peeked at Bi Tao's face several times, because this was the first time that Jifu had met Bi Tao since he spent the night at Hai Tang's place, and he was afraid that Bi Tao would treat him badly. After the three of them sat down in the banquet building, Jifu peeked at Bi Tao's face several times, because this was the first time that Jifu had met Bi Tao since he spent the night at Hai Tang's place, and he was afraid that Bi Tao would treat him badly. Change your attitude once upon a time.
但是碧桃却仍是同小孩子一样，与他要好得很。他看看碧桃那种无猜忌的天真，一边感着一种失望，一边又有一种羞愧的心想起来。那我同你出去，你再上我们家去坐一回吧。那好极了。
But Bai Tao was still like a child and was very friendly with him. He looked at Bi Tao's innocent innocence and felt a sense of disappointment and shame at the same time. Then I'll go out with you, and you can come to our house to sit for a while. That's great.
我正想陪你们去喝一点酒，我和碧桃都还没有吃饭呢。年轻的男女啊，要快乐正是现在，你们都尽你们的力量去寻快乐去吧。人生值得什么？不于少年时求些快乐，等得秋风凋谢的时候，还有什么呢？
I was just going to go have a drink with you. Bi Tao and I haven't eaten yet. Young men and women, the time to be happy is now. You should do your best to find happiness. What is life worth? If you don't seek some happiness in your youth, what else will you have? I was just going to go have a drink with you. Bi Tao and I haven't eaten yet. Young men and women, the time to be happy is now. You should do your best to find happiness. What is life worth?
你们正在做梦的青年男女啊，愿上帝都成就了你们的心愿。我半老了，我的时代过去了，但愿你们都好，都美，都成眷属。不幸的是，不美的人孤独烦闷都推上我的身来，我愿意为你们负担了去。
You young men and women who are dreaming, may God fulfill your wishes. I am half old and my time has passed. I hope you are all well, beautiful, and married. Unfortunate things, unattractive people, loneliness, and boredom are all burdened on me, and I am willing to bear them for you.
横竖我是没有希望的了。如今半老归来，那些莺莺燕燕都要远远的避我了。他上游艺会去唱戏去了，回什么地方去？出城去。像这样无邪思的人，我不该以小人之心待他的。你在这里逛逛。
Anyway, I have no hope. Now that the old man has returned, those warblers and swallows will all avoid me at a distance. She went to the entertainment fair to sing. Go back to where? Go out of the city. I shouldn't treat a person with such innocent thoughts like a villain. You take a stroll here.
我想先回家去。你们这些纯洁的青年呀，你们何苦要上我这里来？你们以为我是你们的指导者吗？你们错了，你们错了。我有什么学问？我有什么见识？哎呀，你们若知道了我的内容。
I want to go home first. You pure young people. Why do you bother to come to me? Do you think I am your guide? You are wrong. You are wrong. What knowledge do I have? What do I know? Ah, if you know my content.
若知道了我的下流的性癖，怕大家都要来打我杀我呢。我是违反道德的叛逆者，我是戴假面的知识阶级，我是这衣冠的禽兽。你们几时来的？今晚我带你上游艺会去逛去吧。制服醒来。
If they knew about my obscene sexual fetishes, I'm afraid everyone would come and beat me and kill me. I am a rebel who violates morality. I am an intellectual wearing a mask. I am a beast in clothes. When did you come? I'll take you to the entertainment fair tonight. The hostage woke up.
已经是11点10分的样子。贾母问他要不要什么吃，他也觉得有些饿了，便托他去叫了2碗鸡丝面来。制服看看外面黑得很，一个人跑出城去，有些怕人，便听了贾母的话，又留在海棠那里过夜了。
It was already 11:10. The fake mother asked him if he wanted anything to eat. He also felt a little hungry, so he asked her to order 2 bowls of shredded chicken noodles. The hostage saw that it was very dark outside and was a little scared of people running out of the city alone, so he listened to the fake mother and stayed at Haitang's place for the night again.
6. 季家的冬夜渐渐地深起来了。制服吃了面，讲了几句闲话，与海棠对坐在那里玩骨牌，忽听见后头房里一阵哄笑声和爆竹声传了过来。制服吃了一惊，问是什么。海棠悠悠地说
6. The winter night at the prostitute's house gradually got darker. The hostage ate some noodles, chatted a few words, and sat across from Haitang playing dominoes. Suddenly he heard a burst of laughter and the sound of firecrackers coming from the back room. The hostage was surprised and asked what it was. Haitang said quietly,
今天是菊花的生日，他姥爷替他放爆竹。制服把衣服穿好之后，问海棠说。制服就把贾母和东西丢下，再跑到翠云房里去一看，他房里的屋船已经烧着摊了下来，箱子器具都严严地燃着了。
Today is Jihua's birthday, and her master sets off firecrackers for her. After the hostage put on his clothes, he asked Haitang. Today is Jihua's birthday, and her master sets off firecrackers for her. After the hostage put on his clothes, he asked Haitang. The hostage left the fake mother and things behind, and ran to Tsueyin's room to take a look. The rafters in her room were already on fire. When it collapsed, the box and utensils were all on fire.
制服不得已就空手的跑了出来，再来寻翠云，又寻他不着。制服跑到碧桃房里去一看，见他房里有4个男人坐着说。制服听了，才知道这便是那后差的人，那小娃娃就是他与海棠的中了。
The hostage had no choice but to run out empty-handed, and looked for Tsueyin again, but could not find her. The hostage ran to Bai Tao's room and saw 4 men sitting in her room and said, dash. After hearing this, the hostage realized that this was the person waiting for him, and that the little baby was his and Haitang's offspring.
制服看看那男人，觉得他的面貌卑鄙得很，一联想到他与海棠结合的事情，竟不觉打起冷静来。他摇了一摇头，对海棠的背后丢场一眼轻笑的眼色，就默默地走了。制服听了这话，
The hostage looked at the man and felt that his appearance was very despicable. When he thought of his union with Haitang, he felt cold and convulsed. He shook his head, glanced at Ducheng behind Haitang's back with a chuckle, and left silently. The hostage heard this.
看看海棠的悲寂的面色，倒替海棠伤心起来。制服又同贾母回进房来，搬第2次的东西。那时候黑烟已经把房内包紧了。制服和贾母抬了第2次东西出来的时候，门外忽遇着了翠云。
Looking at Haitang's sad face, I felt sad for Haitang. The hostage came back to the room with the false mother to move the things for the second time. By then, the room was already tightly packed with black smoke. Looking at Haitang's sad face, I felt sad for Haitang. The hostage came back to the room with the false mother to move the things for the second time. By then, the room was already tightly packed with black smoke. When the hostage and the fake mother came out after carrying the things for the second time, they suddenly met Tsueyin outside the door.
他披散了头发，在那哭喊。制服问他怎么样，他哭着说。制服一看海棠的样子，就跳到里间房里去，把那乳母的小世宝拉了出来。那时的火焰已经烧到了里间屋里了。
She let her hair down and cried. The interrogator asked her, how was it? She cried and said. As soon as the hostage saw Begonia's appearance, he jumped into the inner room and pulled out the wet nurse's little room. She let her hair down and cried. The interrogator asked her, how was it? She cried and said. As soon as the hostage saw Begonia's appearance, he jumped into the inner room and pulled out the wet nurse's little room. By then, the flames had already reached the inner room.
制服吩咐乳母把小孩抱出外面去，他就马上到床上，把一条被拿了下来摊在地板上，把海棠的几件挂在那里的皮袄和枕头边上的一个首饰丢在被里，包做了一包。
The hostage ordered the wet nurse to take the child outside. He immediately went to the bed, took off a quilt and spread it on the floor. He threw several of Haitang's leather jackets hanging there and a piece of jewelry beside the pillow into the quilt and wrapped them into a package.
与一只红漆的皮箱一并拖了出去。外边已经有许多杂乱的人冲来冲去的搬箱子包袱，制服出了死力的奔跑，才把一只箱子和一个背包搬到外面。他回转头来一看，看见海棠和他的贾母一边哭着。
He was dragged out together with a red leather suitcase. There were already many cluttered people rushing around to move boxes and baggage outside. The hostage ran as fast as he could before moving a box and a quilt outside. He turned around and saw Haitang and her fake mother crying.
一边抬了一床帐子跟在后面。制服把2件物事摆下，吐了一口气，忽见边上有一乘人力车走过，他就拉住了人力车，把箱子摆了上去，叫海棠和一个海棠房外使用的男人跟了车子，向空地里看着。
He carried a tent and followed behind. The hostage put down the two things and let out a breath. Suddenly he saw a rickshaw passing by, so he stopped the rickshaw, put the box on it, and asked Haitang and the man outside Haitang's house to follow the car. Looking into the clearing.
海棠一边指着那床前的2只箱子，一边发抖哭着说：“正在现实与梦寐的境界上浮游的时候，制服忽听见床背后有霍霍的响声和竹木的爆裂声音传过来。他一开眼睛
Haitang pointed to the 2 boxes in front of the bed, trembling and crying, dash. While floating in the realm of reality and dream, the hostage suddenly heard a roaring sound from behind the bed, and the crackling sound of bamboo and wood. As soon as he opened his eyes,
觉得房内帐内都充满了烟雾，塞得吐气不出。他知道不好了，用力把海棠一把抱起，将他衣裤拿好。制服就以命令式的声音对他说：“因为这班子里客最少的是海棠。”
He felt that the room and tent were filled with smoke, and he couldn't breathe out. He knew something was wrong, so he picked up Haitang hard and put her clothes away. The hostage said to her in a commanding voice, "Because the one with the fewest customers in this group is Haitang."
现在只有一个制服和另外一个年老的后差的人。那后差的人现在钱也用完了，听说不常上海棠这里来。制服也是于年底下要走的，1年中间最要用钱的年终，海棠怕要一个客也没有。
Now there is only one hostage and another old outpost. The person who served at that time has now run out of money, and I heard that he doesn't come to Haitang very often. The hostage is also leaving at the end of the year. At the end of the year, when money is most needed, Haitang was afraid that she would not have any customers.
制服想到这里，就不得不为海棠担起忧来。将近2点的时候，贾母把门带上了出去，海棠制服脱衣睡了。因为他太出神了，所以制服走上他的背后，他也并不知道。制服也不去惊动他。
Thinking of this, the hostage couldn't help but worry about Haitang. At nearly 2 o'clock, the fake mother closed the door and went out, and Haitang's hostess took off his clothes and went to sleep. Because she was so absorbed, she didn't know that her hostage walked up behind her. The hostage didn't bother her either.
便默默地站在他的背后。过了3、5分钟，一个45、6、面貌瘦小、鼻头红红的男人走进了海棠的身边，问他说：“原来荷珠、碧桃的房在外边，与菊花、翠云的房隔2个天井，所以火势不大，可以不搬的。”
He stood silently behind her. After 3 or 5 minutes, a man in his mid-40s with a thin face and a red nose approached Haitang and asked her, dash. It turns out that Hezhu and Bitao's room is outside, separated by 2 patios from Juhua and Suiyun's room. So the fire is not big and they don't need to move.
制服听了便放了心，走出来上空地里去找海棠去。制服到空地里的时候，就看见海棠竟呆呆地站在那里。他话没有讲完，海棠的贾母也从门里跌了进来，带了哭声叫着说：“菊花的房同我的连着。”
The hostage was relieved after hearing this and went out to look for Begonia in the open space. When the hostage arrived in the open space, he saw Haitang Jean standing there blankly. Before he finished speaking, Haitang's fake mother also fell in from the door, crying and saying, dash. Chrysanthemum's room is connected to mine.
我一点东西也没有拿出来，烧得干干净净了。碧桃、荷珠已经往外边去了，他们的东西由我们在这里守着，万一烧过来的时候，我们会替他搬的，请于老爷放心。海棠，不好了，快起来，快起来！没有什么。
I didn't take anything out, it was completely burned. Bitao and Hezhu have already gone outside. We will keep their things here. If they are burned down, we will move them for her. Don't worry, Mr. Yu. Begonia, it's not good, get up quickly, get up quickly. There is nothing.
我的小宝宝，我的小宝宝，小宝宝呢？我们的小孩子呢？海棠被他一问，倒吃了一惊，一见是他，便含了笑容，指着乳母说：“你看，你的值钱的物是摆在什么地方的？你惊骇了吗？不要着忙。”
My little baby, where's the little baby? Where is our little child? Hai Tang was surprised when he asked. When she saw it was him, she pointed at the wet nurse with a smile and said, "Look. Where do you put your valuables? Are you shocked? Don't be in a hurry."
先把裤子衣服穿好来，另外的一切事情有我在这里，不要紧，不要着忙。那一天因为没有风，并且因为救火人多，制服出向外的时候，火已经灭了。东方已有一线微明，鸡叫的声音有几处听得出来。
Put on your pants and clothes first. I'm here for everything else. It doesn't matter. Don't be busy. Because there was no wind that day and there were many people fighting the fire had already been extinguished when the hostage came out of the alley. There was already a glimmer of light in the east, and the sound of roosters' crow could be heard in several places.
制服一个人冒了清早的寒冷空气，从灰黑清冷的街上一步一步地走上北门城下去。他的头脑为夜来的淫乐与班火时候的杂闹搅乱了，觉得思想混杂得很。但是在这混杂的思想里，
The hostage braved the cold early morning air alone and walked step by step from the gray, dark, and cold streets to the North Gate city. His mind was confused by the nighttime pleasures and the commotion when moving fires. He felt that his thoughts were very mixed, but in this mixed thoughts,
他只见一个红鼻头的40余岁的男子的身体和海棠矮小灰白的肉体合在一处，浮在他的眼前。他在游艺场中感得的那一种孤独的悲哀和一种后悔的心思混在一块，笼罩上他的全心。切
he saw the body of a man in his 40s with a red nose merged with Haitang's short, gray body, floating in front of his eyes. The lonely sadness he felt in the amusement park was mixed with a kind of regret, and enveloped his whole heart. 7.
第二天，寒空里忽又潇潇地下起雨来。倪龙安感冒了风寒，还睡在床上。制服一早就跑上龙安的房，将昨晚失火的事情讲给了他听。他也叹着说：“翠云真是不幸呀，可惜我又病了，不能去看她。”
The next day, it suddenly started to rain again in the cold sky. Ni Longan caught a cold and was still sleeping in bed. The hostage ran to Longan's room early in the morning and told him about the fire last night. He also sighed. He said, "Cueyun is so unfortunate. It's a pity that I'm sick again and can't see her."
并且现在身边钱也没有，不能为他尽一点力。这一天下午，制服冒雨进城去一看，陆河班只烧去了菊花、翠云的2间房子和海棠的里半间小屋。海棠的房间已经用了木板修盖好，海棠一家。
And I don't have any money around me now. I can't do anything for her. That afternoon, the hostage went to the city in the rain to take a look. Lu and Ban had only burned the 2 houses of Juhua and Cueyun and half of Haitang's house. Haitang's room had been repaired with wooden boards. Cover it up, Begonia family.
早已搬进去住好了。制服想问翠云的下落，海棠的贾母只说不知道，不肯告诉制服。制服坐了一会出来的时候，却遇见了碧桃。碧桃红了一红脸，笑制服说。制服默坐在了好久，才慢慢地安慰他说
Already moved in and settled in. The hostage wanted to ask about Cueyun's whereabouts, but Haitang's fake mother only said she didn't know and refused to tell the hostage. When the hostage sat for a while and came out, he met Bitao. Bai Tao blushed, smiled and said to her husband. Zhifu sat silently for a long time, then slowly comforted her and said, "Dash."
制服跑上前去把他一把拖住说。制服看看他的周围，觉得连梳头的镜盒都没有，就问他说。制服接着说。制服开皮包来一看，里面还有7、8张钞票存在，但拿给了他说。
The hostage ran forward and grabbed her and said, "Dash." The hostage looked around her and felt that there was not even a mirror box for combing her hair, so he asked her. The hostage continued. The hostage opened the bag and saw that there were still 7 or 8 bills inside, but he gave it to her and said, "Dash."
觉得第二句话说不出来，鼻子里也有些酸起来了。翠云见了制夫，就又哭了起来。那些四周坐着的贾母妓女走散之后，翠云才断断续续地哭着说。她讨了饶，制夫才问她翠云住在什么地方。
I felt like I couldn't say the second sentence, and my nose felt a little sore. When Cueyun saw her hostage, she started crying again. After the fake prostitutes sitting around dispersed, Cueyun cried intermittently and said, "Dash." She begged for mercy, and then her hostage asked her where Cueyun lived.
他领了制夫走上巷口的一间同猪圈似的屋里去。一间潮湿不亮的丈5尺长的小屋里，坐满了些贾母妓女，在那里吊尾翠云。翠云披散了头发，眼睛哭得红肿，坐在他们的中间。制服进去叫了一声。
She led the hostage into a room that looked like a pigsty at the entrance of the alley. A damp, dark, 5-foot-long hut was filled with fake female prostitutes comforting Cueyun. Cueyun, her hair disheveled and her eyes red and swollen from crying, sat between them. The hostage went in and called out.
他又哭着摇头说：“ 还有什么？我有80几块的钞票全摆在箱子里烧湿了，请你收着，暂且当作零用罢。你另外还有什么客人能帮你的忙？翠云，我想要明先出50元，你出50元，我出50元，送他。
She cried again and shook her head and said, And, what else? I have more than 80 yuan of banknotes, all of which were burned in the box. Please keep it and keep it as pocket money for now. Do you have any other customers who can help you? Sueyun. I want to pay 50 yuan tomorrow, you pay 50 yuan, and I pay 50 yuan to give it to her.
教他好做些更换的衣服。下半天课完之后，打算再进城去看他。海棠的东西我都为他搬出了，大约损失也是不多的。另外还有1、2个客人都是穷的同我一样。偏是龙安这几天病了，不能过来看你。
Teach her how to make some changes of clothes. After class in the second half of the day, I plan to go to the city to see her again. I have moved all Haydang's things for her, so the loss will probably not be much. There are 1 or 2 other guests, all of whom are as poor as me. It's just that Longan has been sick these days and can't come to see you.
但我已经同他商量过，大约他与许明先总能帮你的忙的。你若再讲这样的话，我又要咬你的嘴了。你现在有零用钱没有？你昨晚上没有惊出病来吗？于老爷，我怎么好呢？
But I have discussed it with him, and I think he and Su Mingxian can always help you. If you say such words again, I will bite your mouth again. Do you have any pocket money now? Didn't you get sick last night? Master you, how is that good?
现在连被褥都没有了。制服安慰了他一番，约定于明天送50块钱过来，便走回学校内去。爸，耶稣的圣诞节近了，1921年所余也无几了。晴不晴，雨不雨的阴天连续了几天。
Now there's not even a bedding left. The hostage comforted her, agreed to send 50 yuan tomorrow, and then walked back to the school. 8. Jesus Christmas is approaching. The rest of 1921 there are not many days left. It will be sunny or rainy for several days.
航空里堆满了灰黑的层云。今年气候说比往年暖些，但是城外法政专门学校附近的枯树电杆已在寒风里发起颤来了。制服的学校里，为考试问题与教职员的去留问题，空气紧张起来。
The cold sky was filled with gray and black stratus clouds. The climate this year is said to be warmer than in previous years, but the dead trees and electric poles near the legal and political college outside City A are already trembling in the cold wind. The atmosphere in Jifu's school became tense due to examination issues and staff retention issues.
学生向校长许明先提出了一种要求，把某某某某的几个教员要去，某某某某的几个教员要留的事情非常强硬地说了。制服因为是陆校长聘来的教员。
The students made a request to the principal Su Mingxian, saying that several teachers of such and such should go and several teachers of such and such should be retained. They said it very forcefully. The hostess was hired by Principal Lu. Teacher.
并且明年还不得不上日本去将卒业论文提出，所以学生来留的时候确实的复决了。那纯洁的学生听了制服的阴阴的别话，就在制服面前哭了起来。制服的灰颓的心也被他打动了。
And next year I have to go to Japan to submit my graduation thesis, so when students come to stay, they are really in trouble. After hearing the hostage's earnest words of farewell, the pure student burst into tears in front of the hostage. The hostage's depressed heart was also moved by him.
但是最后制服终究对他说，这些自伤自悼的思想，他为想满足自家的感伤的怀抱，当然是比事实还更夸大的。制服又举起杯干了一满杯，这一次却对翠云说，制服看看海棠那愚笨的样子。
But in the end, the hostage finally said to him, These thoughts of self-injury and self-mourning, and his desire to satisfy his own sentimental embrace, are of course more exaggerated than the facts. Jifu raised his glass again and drank a full cup, but this time he said to Tsueyin. The hostage looked at Haitang's stupid look.
与碧桃的活泼，和珠的娇娆，翠云的老练一比，更加觉得他可怜。喝了几杯无聊的酒，制服就招海棠出席来同他讲话。他自家坐在一张藤榻上，教海棠坐在他怀里。他拿了3张10元的钞票。
Compared with Bitao's liveliness, Haju's charm, and Sueyin's sophistication, she felt even more pitiful. After drinking a few glasses of boring wine, the hostage invited Haitang to come and talk to her. He sat on a rattan couch and taught Haitang to sit in his arms. He took 3 $10 bills.
轻轻地塞在他的袋里，把他那只小的二油头捏弄了一回，正想同他亲一亲嘴走开的时候，那红鼻子的卑鄙的面貌又忽然浮在他的眼前。制服悠悠地向他耳根前说了一句：“你先回去吧。”
Gently stuffed into her bag. He pinched her little but once, and when he was about to kiss her and walk away, The mean face with the red nose suddenly appeared in front of his eyes again. The hostage said quietly to her ear, "You should go back first."
就站了起来，走回到席上来了。海棠坐了一呼，就告辞了。制服送了他到了房门口，想他再回转头来看一眼的，但是愚笨的海棠竟一直的出去了。制服一时涨红了脸，心里气愤的不堪。
He stood up and walked back to the table. Haitang sat for a while and then left. The hostage escorted her to the door of the room, hoping that she would turn around and take a look, but the stupid Haitang kept walking out. The hostage's face turned red for a moment, and he was extremely angry.
但是胆量很小、虚荣心很大的制服也只勉强的笑了一脸，独自一个人从班子里出来，上寒风很紧的长街上走回学校里去。本来是生得闷气儿的他，因想尝尝那失恋的滋味，故意车也不坐。
But the hostess, who was very timid and very vain, only smiled reluctantly, walked out of the class alone, and walked back to the school on the cold and windy long street. He was originally sulky, but because he wanted to taste the feeling of broken love, he deliberately did not sit in the car.
在冷清的街上走向北门城下去，他一路走一路想。碧桃马上从他的小孩似的悲哀状态恢复了转来。秦师进来之后，碧桃问唱什么戏，制服摇头说。海棠走后，制服忽觉兴致淋漓起来。
Walk towards the north gate on the deserted street. As he walked, he thought about. Bitao immediately recovered from her childlike state of sadness. After the violinist came in, Bitao asked what kind of opera was being performed. The hostess shook his head and said, "Dash." After Haitang left, the hostage suddenly became very interested.
接连喝了2-3杯酒，他就红了眼睛对碧桃说：“有一个星期六晚上，制服喝醉了酒，又与龙安、风氏上陆河班去。那时候翠云的房间也修理好了，烧烧鸦片烟，讲讲闲话，已经到了12点钟。”
After drinking 2 or 3 glasses of wine in succession, he said to Bitao with red eyes. One Saturday night, the hostage got drunk and went to Lehiban with Longan and Fengshe. By that time, Zueyun's room was also repaired. Burning opium cigarettes and gossiping, it's already 12 o'clock.
制服想同海棠再睡一夜，就把他今晚不回去的话说了。龙安、风氏走后，海棠的贾母匆匆促促地对制服说：“学校内考试也完了，学生都已回家去了。制服因为试卷没有看完，所以不得不迟走几天。”
The hostage wanted to sleep with Haitang one more night, so he told him that he would not go back tonight. After Longan and Fengshe left, Haitang's fake mother hurriedly said to her husband. The school exams are also over. The students had all gone home, but Jifu had to stay a few days late because he had not finished reading the test papers.
约定龙安于3日后乘船到上海去，大家都赞成了。碧桃还是呆呆的在那里注视制服，制服忽对碧桃说：“同事中间，因为明年或者不能再会的缘故，大家轮流请起酒来。这几日制服的心里。”
It was agreed that Longan would take a boat to Shanghai in 3 days. Everyone agreed, but Bitao still stared blankly at the hostage. The hostage suddenly said to Bitao. Among colleagues, because we may not be able to meet again next year, everyone takes turns inviting drinks, which has been in my hostess's heart these past few days.
被淡淡的离情充满了。到了要走的前晚，他总觉得海棠人还忠厚，那一晚的事情全是那贾母弄的鬼。虽然知道天下最无情的便是妓女，虽然知道海棠还有一个同他生小孩的客在。
Filled with a touch of detachment. On the night before leaving, he always felt that Haitang people were still loyal and that what happened that night was all the fault of the fake mother. Even though I know that the most ruthless people in the world are prostitutes, and even though I know that Haitang still has a guest with whom she has a child.
但是生性柔弱的制夫觉得这样的别去太是无情，况且同吴迟生一样的那纯洁的碧桃，无论如何总要同他话一话别。况这一回别后，此生能否再见是很渺茫，即便能够再见，也不知更在何日。
But the hostess, who is weak by nature, feels that it is too heartless not to go like this. Moreover, the pure Bitao like Wu Qixing would always say goodbye to her no matter what. After we say goodbye this time, it is very unclear whether we will see each other again in this life. Even if we can see each other again, we don't know when.
所以那一晚，制夫就做了东，邀龙安、风氏、碧桃、何珠、翠云、海棠在小蓬莱菜馆里吃饭。几句话说的翠云掉下眼泪来，一座的人都沉默了。吴风氏觉得这沉默的空气压迫不过，就对制夫说。
So that night, the hostess made a treat and invited Longan, Fengshe, Bitao, Hezhu, Zueyun and Haitang to have dinner at the small Penglai restaurant. After saying a few words, Zueyun shed tears, and everyone in the room fell silent. Wu Fengshe felt that the silent air was not oppressive, so he said to the interrogator, Dash.
其中有一个学生特别与制服要好， 大家推他来留了几次，制服只讲了些伤心的话，与他约了后会，婉转的将不能再留的话说给他听。连海棠这样丑的人都不要我了。啊！
There was one student who was particularly close to his hostess. Everyone recommended him to come and stay several times, but his hostage only said some sad words. There was one student who was particularly close to his hostess. Everyone recommended him to come and stay several times, but his hostage only said some sad words. After making an appointment with him, he told him in a nonchalant way that he could no longer stay. Even an ugly person like Hai Tang doesn't want me anymore. Ah.
我真是世上最孤独的人了，真成了世上最孤独的人了呀！要答应你再来也是不难，但现在虽答应了你，明年若不能来也是无益的。这去留的问题，我们暂且不讲罢。翠云，你真是糟糕，嫁了人。
I am really the loneliest person in the world. I have become the loneliest person in the world. It's not difficult to promise you to come again, but even if I promise you now, it will be useless if you can't come next year. Let's not discuss the issue of staying or leaving for now. Sueyun, you are really terrible. Married.
男人偏会早死，这一次火灾你又烧在里头。但是翠云，我们人是很容易老的。我说，翠云，你别怪我，还是早一点跟人吧。碧桃，我真爱你，我真爱你那小孩似的样子。我希望你不要把自家太看轻了。
Men tend to die early. This time, you were burned in the fire, but... Sueyun, we age very easily. I said, Sueyun, don't blame me, it's better to follow someone earlier. Bitao, I really love you, I really love your childlike look. I hope you don't take your family too lightly.
办得到，请你把你的天真保持到老。我因为海棠的缘故，不能和你多见几面，是我心里很不舒服的一件事情。可是你给我的印象比什么更深，我若要记起忘不了的人来，那么你就是其中的一个。
If you can, please keep your innocence until you grow old. Because of Hai Tang, I can't see you more, which is a very uncomfortable thing in my heart. But the impression you left on me is deeper than anything else. If you want to remember people you can't forget, then you are one of them.
我这一次回上海后，不知道能不能和我的姓吴的好朋友相见。我若见了他，定要把你的事情讲给他听。我那一天晚上对你讲的那个朋友，你还想得起来吗？碧桃，你看吃了吗？唱戏啊，我们会少离多。
After I return to Shanghai this time, I don't know if I can meet my good friend named Wu. If I meet him, I will definitely tell him your story. Do you still remember the friend I told you about that night? Bitao, are you crazy? Sing opera. We will be less and more apart.
今晚上应该快乐一点，我们请碧桃唱几出戏吧。我不知道，由你自家唱吧。今晚对不起得很，海棠要上别处去。碧桃想了一想，就唱了一段打棍出乡，正是制服在游艺会里听过的那一段。
Tonight should be a little happier. Let's ask Bitao to sing some plays. I don't know, you can sing it yourself. I'm very sorry for tonight, Hai Tang has to go somewhere else. Bai Tao thought for a while and sang a piece of Beating the Stick Out of the Box, which was exactly the piece that the hostess had heard at the entertainment party.
制服听他唱了一句，就走上窗边坐下。他听听他的悲哀的清唱，看看窗外沉沉的暗夜，觉得一种莫名其妙的哀思忽而涌上心来。不晓是什么原因，他今晚上觉得心里难过得很。听碧桃唱完了戏。
The hostage heard her sing a line and walked up to the window and sat down. He listened to her sad a cappella and looked out the window at the dark night, feeling an inexplicable sadness suddenly well up in his heart. He didn't know why, but he felt very sad tonight after listening to Bitao finish singing.
胡乱地喝了几杯酒，也就别了碧桃和朱翠云，跑回家来。隆安，封氏定要他上陆河班去，他怎么也不肯，竟一个人走了。
He drank a few glasses of wine carelessly, said goodbye to Bai Tao, He Zhu,